Part 8. Finn Taylor looked at the pie on his plate. He knew exactly what Hilary Stone meant. It was simple. If he helped the Fourth Branch fight for the Larson family's assets, Hilary Stone was willing to split some of that with his family. But Finn Taylor merely sneered. In his eyes, the Larson family was nothing. If not for Yvette Larson, he wouldn't even be interested in a family like this. He could get anything without even lifting his hands. Why would he need anyone to give him a share of anything? Just then, a stray dog trotted up to Finn Taylor while wagging its tail. Finn Taylor picked up the pie and tossed it to the dog. "I have something on, so I won't stay any longer." With that, Finn Taylor turned to leave. Hilary Stone was fuming as she watched him walk off. As he walked out of the restaurant, Finn Taylor whipped out his phone and sent a message to Horned Serpent, asking him to investigate Hilary Stone. He couldn't kick away the feeling that this woman had definitely returned because she wanted something. From my initial understanding, Hilary Stone's family owns just as many assets as the Larson family. Logically speaking, there's no need for her to fight for the Larson family's assets. Perhaps something has happened to the Stone family. After dealing with all that, Finn Taylor headed home. Ellipsis. The Larson family's house. Yvette Larson walked downstairs, only to find her parents lying on the sofa, unmoving. She flared up. "Are you guys incapable of cooking now that Finn Taylor isn't around?" Of course, Linda James felt aggrieved that her daughter was lecturing her. "Why are you blaming us? You should blame Finn Taylor. Why did he go out?" Yvette Larson had been busy rushing out reports in her room for the past few hours. Now that she had finally finished, she was intending to make some food for herself. In the end, what greeted her was the sight of her parents lying there, waiting for her husband to make them a meal. Since when did they become like this? "Why are you looking at me? Why don't you hurry up and call Finn Taylor to ask him when he's coming back?" To be honest, Yvette Larson's heart broke for her husband. "He has really spoiled my parents rotten." Yvette Larson wasn't even thinking of calling her husband. She could see just how much he had improved over the past few months. "Since Finn told me that he has something on, that has to be true. I'm not going to disturb him." Just then, Finn Taylor walked in. "Yvette, I'm back. I bought you some fried chick." Before Finn Taylor could finish his sentence, his mother-in-law had already rushed up to snatch the box of fried chicken away from him. "Why did you buy so little? Do you think it'll be enough for the three of us? Huh, you guys haven't eaten, huh?" Finn Taylor hadn't expected that Yvette Larson's family hadn't eaten yet. He had bought this for his wife's supper. Some people would rather starve to death than work. Finn Taylor felt a little awkward. "Shall I cook now?" He walked into the kitchen to find that they had run out of all ingredients. No matter how amazing Finn Taylor was, he couldn't make something out of nothing. "Forget it, you two can have it. I'll just get some cookies." With that, Yvette Larson headed upstairs. Her husband followed suit and let out a sly smile as he reached the top of the stairs. "Why are you smiling so slyly? Make a guess." Finn Taylor was still keeping it from her and didn't let her in on his secret. "I'm not going to guess. Hurry up and tell me." Yvette Larson didn't even seem like the CEO of a large corporation. "Look." Finn Taylor took out a piece of fried chicken. "I secretly hid one before Mom stole it from me just now." "Ha ha ha." Yvette Larson chuckled. "I had wondered what my husband was doing, acting so furtively. I had never expected him to do this, but it's funny." She had tasted all kinds of delicacies, but this piece of fried chicken tasted especially delicious to her. "Oh right, let me tell you something. Hilary Stone is back." Finn Taylor was a little afraid that his wife still didn't know about it. "Who?" "Hilary Stone, Quinn Larson's mother." Yvette Larson remained indifferent even after hearing that. "Oh, no wonder Quinn Larson has been so arrogant these few days. He's been acting as though there's someone backing him. I was thinking that he shouldn't act this way even though he's now the CEO. After all, there's still Quinn and Eleanor stepping all over him. It turns out that he's gotten someone to back him who will never betray him." Yvette Larson was especially cautious about Hilary Stone. At that time, the latter had stirred up a lot of trouble after marrying into the Larson family. Even until now, these things were still taboo in the Larson family and were secrets to be kept. "Have you met her?" Thinking about those secrets, Yvette Larson flashed a suspicious glance at her husband. "I met her. How is she?" "She's beautiful, isn't she? Doesn't she exude a unique charm?" "She's not as beautiful as you. You're so glib. Do you think I don't know how beautiful Hilary Stone is?" "I don't. I'm not good with faces." PFF'd. Yvette Larson nearly burst out into laughter. Afraid that I would get angry if he said that other women are more beautiful than me, he even came up with a lie that he was bad with faces. "Why did Hilary Stone look for you? She treated me to a meal. Wow, I've known her for so many years, and she's never treated me to a single meal. Yet, she treated you. Finn Taylor felt like this was a trap. What else? You'd better fess up. Yvette Larson tapped her feet gently, waiting for her husband to confess everything to her. She also served me a slice of pie during that meal. Are you guys that close for her to serve you food? Yvette Larson was wary, seeming to realize something was amiss. What else did you guys do apart from eating? She even said that the fourth branch is willing to share a slice of the pie with our family. As long as they have something, we'll get a share of it too. Yvette Larson frowned. I then threw that slice of pie to the dog. PFF'd. Yvette Larson had initially been fraught with worry, but now, she was bent over with laughter. You're good. I wish I could have seen Hillary Stone's face when she was being played by someone else. While she was in the Larson family, halfway through, Yvette Larson seemed to have caught herself and quickly shut up. What happened in the Larson family? Finn Taylor was waiting for the most exciting part of the story, but that plan had gone up in flames. Why are you so interested in Hillary Stone? Yvette Larson chose to throw a tantrum and refused to reveal anything. Hurry up and tell me about it. I'm begging you, my dear wife. Just talking about Hillary Stone's secret made Yvette Larson want to burst out into laughter. She didn't go straight to the point. Instead, she asked her husband a question. Finn, why do you think all the other Larson family branches ganged up against our family? Finn Taylor had wondered about this question too. I'd always thought that the eldest family had lost favor with them because of the tradition of the eldest son inheriting everything. But now that my wife is saying this, it seems like there's more to this. Let me ask you another question. Why did Grandpa skip the second generation and choose his successor from the third generation? This was something worth thinking about. In the past, Finn Taylor had received a standardized answer to this question. The Larson family's entire second generation was useless. As such, the old master had no choice but to choose his successor from the third generation instead. But after a few interactions, Finn Taylor realized that the second generation wasn't as useless as they were made out to be. This included his father-in-law, Francis Larson. His father-in-law had always been putting on an act, allowing Linda James to run the family instead. All these things added up together gave off the feeling that there was something amiss in the Larson family. It was as though everyone was hiding a secret. Could this secret have something to do with Hillary Stone? Let me ask you a final question. Why hasn't Hillary Stone been back even once to see her son in the past 18 years? Finn Taylor thought that he already had his answer. It was just that he couldn't voice it out. His suspicion was that Hillary Stone had been having affairs with the Larson family's second generation. Perhaps it was Quince Larson's father, Franklin Larson. Or perhaps, it was Eleanor Larson's father, Frederick Larson. Of course, there was an even greater possibility that it was both of them. It was this very scandal that had disqualified the entire Larson family's second generation from inheriting the company. Finn Taylor even suspected that the death of Quinn Larson's father Freddie Larson was related to this matter. That was why Yvette Larson's family was being targeted. It was because their family was the only one who hadn't been involved in this scandal at all. As for his wife's last question, Finn Taylor wanted to ask if Quinn Larson was Freddie Larson's son at all. Maybe he was Frederick Larson or even Franklin Larson's. However, this is no longer important. I thought that I had met with a nobody, but I never thought that Hillary Stone would be such a big shot. Interesting. How interesting. Ellipsis. The next day, Finn Taylor headed out with a few lackeys to find Oliver Kleina. He had previously promised Penny that he would resolve the matter for her. Finn Taylor glanced at the lackeys whom Wampus had found. With just one glance, he could tell that these lackeys were capable. They weren't putting on an act. Finn Taylor punched one of their shoulders. That guy didn't even flinch, his body was well built. Finn Taylor quickly brought them to a construction site. This was none other than Oliver Kleina's workplace. He was a construction supervisor and had 30 to 40 construction workers under his leadership. Remember, deal only with the person who's at fault. If anyone here hurts an innocent worker, don't blame me for being ruthless. Of course, they all took Finn Taylor's command seriously and swore not to go against his wishes. Ellipsis. Just as Finn Taylor got out of the house, his wife headed for her office too. Hillary Stone was waiting at the entrance to the neighborhood with a cup of coffee in her hand. It was as though she was waiting to watch a show. At the same time, 4 to 5 beggars appeared nearby out of nowhere. However, they loitered by the entrance without leaving. It seemed like they were waiting for someone. From time to time, they would even glance toward the neighborhood. Ellipsis. At the construction site, Finn Taylor went up to a worker and asked for Oliver Kleina. Are you looking for Mr. Kleine? He's the rado you see the excavator. He's on it. Finn Taylor turned in the direction that worker had pointed. There was indeed an excavator. Upon seeing it, his gaze hardened. Things are different now. If I were to go over now, it would be easy for Oliver Kleine to get away since he's in the excavator. Once the latter starts operating the vehicle, nobody would even dare to get close. Of course, it's simple for me to damage the excavator. It's just that I'm unwilling to expose myself for such a trivial matter. Mate, I'm looking for Mr. Kleine to discuss a business deal. I have an upcoming project, and I want to ask him if he's interested, said Finn Taylor as he handed the worker a cigarette. That worker glanced at the cigarette and took it. He had fallen for this trap. He was overwhelmed with emotions as he headed toward the excavator. Finn Taylor threw his lackeys a glance. They immediately understood their boss's intention. Ellipsis. Just as Yvette Larson drove out of her neighborhood, she was surrounded by a few beggars. She couldn't even move her car. She honked at them, but they had no intention of stepping aside. Maybe all they want is money. As this thought, she retrieved $30 from her purse. Here, I'll give you some money. Can you guys move aside? As soon as she rolled her window down, a beggar rushed over to try to yank her door open. Yvette Larson felt a chill run down her spine. She tried her best to roll the window back up as quickly as possible, but it was already too late. The man had already forced his way in. Another person then tried to drag Yvette Larson out of the car. She struggled to step on the accelerator and rush off, but she was too late once again. She was forcefully hauled out of the car, and Yvette Larson tried with all her might to land a punch on that beggar's face. Unfortunately, she was too weak and had no way of breaking free from his grip. In front of the neighborhood entrance, Hilary Stone was still sipping on her cup of coffee cheerfully. Then, she stood up and left. When she left, a strange smile was plastered on her face. At the very same time that she left, those beggars suddenly dropped everything and left as well. Yvette Larson was left on the ground, sobbing. She had been scared stiff earlier. It was terror she had never felt in her entire life. She had been completely helpless. How she wished her husband could be by her side at this moment. Ellipsis. At the construction site, after learning from a worker that someone was looking to hire him for a project, Oliver Kleine was visibly excited. He rushed over eagerly, but he had no sooner done so than the people behind Finn Taylor took out a sack to throw Oliver Kleine in. He struggled frantically, but of course, he was no match for them. That worker from before was terrified by the sight before his eyes, but Finn Taylor stared at him, and he didn't dare to make a peep. Then, Finn Taylor gestured for his lackeys to follow him. With that, they headed out of the construction site. With Finn Taylor leading the way, Oliver Kleine was carried to the house door of Penny's mother. They flung the sack onto the ground, allowing Oliver Kleine to crawl out. He was still swearing at them and probably would have attacked them if not for the fact that he was vastly outnumbered. Kneel down, Finn Taylor spat out. Oliver Kleine took in his surroundings, finally realizing that he was at the door of his former mother-in-law's house. In an instant, he was dumbfounded. Did Penny hire you guys? I already divorced that woman. Why did you take me here? Oliver Kleine tried to make excuses for himself. I told you to get down on your knees. Finn Taylor had no interest in listening to this man's nonsense. All he wanted the latter to do was kneel to the old lady. Why should I kneel? We're already divorced. How ridiculous. Oliver Kleine tried to leave, but one of Finn Taylor's lackeys viciously kicked him in the knees such that he bowed over into a kneel on the ground. And it just so happened that he was facing the old lady's house. Oliver Kleine, I don't care whether you've gotten a divorce or not. I brought you here to ask about one thing. Oliver Kleine remained silent, wondering what Finn Taylor was trying to say. Do you still remember how you married Penny? By my own efforts, of course. He initially wanted to say that he had only married Penny because he had proven his worth, but he hadn't even finished his sentence before a few images surfaced in his mind. At that time, he had been dirt poor. He had absolutely no money to get a wife, but he liked Penny very much. That was why he had gone to Penny's house to do their chores. There was nothing he wouldn't do, from cleaning to harvesting crops. They could count on him for any chores they needed to get done. This was how he left a good impression on Penny's family. Of course, he never would have gotten to marry Penny if he had simply done just that. The whole of Penny's family was educated. While Penny had been a college student, the old lady was a teacher. As for him, he was almost illiterate. All he knew how to write was his name. But while everyone in Penny's family objected to him, the old lady stood up for him. She insisted on marrying her daughter to him. Oliver Kleine had almost forgotten about this episode of his past, but Finn Taylor's question had refreshed his memory. In an instant, tears welled up in his eyes. The old lady is lucky that she wasn't frightened to death. There's a fable about a farmer and a snake that repays good with evil, but I guess you wouldn't know anything about that. It's such a pity that Penny married an illiterate man like you. As expected, Oliver Kleine didn't understand what Finn Taylor was saying. But it was exactly because of this that the former started thinking of something else. In the first 3 years of my marriage, Penny would often say things I didn't understand. After all, it was a habit she had cultivated over 2 decades. It was common in her circle to use such vocabulary, and everyone else understood her. I was just a stranger who had barged in on her life and didn't understand what she was saying. 3 years later, I suddenly realized that I understood everything Penny said. It was obviously because Penny had changed for my sake. How could I abandon a woman who loved me so much? Finally, Oliver Kleine broke down into tears, and he fell to the ground with a loud thud. Mom, I was wrong. Thud. Oliver Kleine hit his head against the ground yet again while kneeling and apologizing in the direction of the old lady's house. Finn Taylor clapped. I've solved the matter. He turned back to look at his lackeys. When you go back to Wampus, tell him that each of you will get $1,500. The lackeys couldn't help but wonder if they had heard him wrongly. It seems like we haven't done anything, yet we are going to get $1,500. Knowing what they were about to say, Finn Taylor waved them off and asked them to stay silent. With everything settled, Finn Taylor headed home. Before he even entered the neighborhood, he spotted a car parked at the entrance to the neighborhood. There was a woman wailing beside the car. Finn Taylor was still wondering what was going on when it suddenly dawned on him that it was his wife. In an instant, he felt like someone was crushing his heart. He rushed up to his wife with large strides. Then, he bent down and grabbed his wife's hand. Don't worry, I'm here. Seeing this familiar face, Yvette Larson suddenly realized how comforting his presence was. I hated him so much when he first married into our family 3 years ago. I even swore to myself never to speak to him in my life. But after 3 years, it seems like I can't get away from him. He's my everything, he's my husband. What's the matter? Boo-hoo. Yvette Larson didn't say a thing, but her pent-up emotions burst out right then. Her tears fell uncontrollably as she lay in her significant other's arms. The latter decided not to pursue the matter. He just hugged his wife tightly, providing her with warmth and hope. Eventually, the whole neighborhood learned of the matter. Very quickly, it reached Frances Larson and Linda James as well. A few neighbors had rushed to the neighborhood entrance as well. By then, Yvette Larson had already calmed down because of her husband. The latter supported her and helped her up to the front passenger seat. Just as he was about to drive off, Linda James arrived. Slap. Without any hesitation, she landed a slap on Finn Taylor's face. Mom, Yvette Larson rushed out of the car. Finn Taylor, oh Finn Taylor. You're getting more out of hand by the day. I dislike you, but what about Yvette? From the very start, she's never mentioned a divorce, has she? Who stands up for you when I scold you? Who feeds you when I starve you? Also, who secretly gives you a cushion whenever I make you kneel down on the ground? You're a piece of work. How could you repay kindness with evil? You'd better give me a good explanation as to why my daughter is sobbing so badly. Linda James had no clue what had happened. She had simply heard that her daughter was crying her heart out at the neighborhood entrance and that their matrilocal son-in-law was by her side. Naturally, she assumed that Finn Taylor had bullied her daughter. Mom, I have nothing to say. Great, are you not even going to rebuke me now? Finn Taylor didn't know what was going through his mother-in-law's mind. He simply believed that it was his fault for not protecting his wife. It's true that this is my fault. I failed to protect her well. As such, he didn't try to make excuses for himself. Yet, it was his behavior that convinced Linda James even further that Finn Taylor was guilty. Mom, it's not what you think. Although Yvette Larson didn't know what was going through their minds, she felt that there had been a misunderstanding between them. Stop it, Yvette, your mom isn't blind. I can still tell right from wrong. That's right, Yvette, it's my fault. I shouldn't have let you go through that. That's right, Yvette, it's my fault. I shouldn't have let you go through that. Finn Taylor's words merely added fuel to the fire. In an instant, Linda James was sure that her son-in-law had bullied her daughter and was why the latter was sobbing her eyes out. She grabbed Finn Taylor's collar. It's you, isn't it? You were the one who bullied Yvette, right? Finn Taylor didn't try to defend himself. I usually send Yvette Larson to work. It's only because I had to settle Oliver Kleine's matter that I had let my wife go to work alone today. Never in my life would I have thought that she would be bullied. How could I have placed more importance on Oliver Klein's matter than Yvette Larson? It's all my fault. He had no complaints about his mother-in-law blaming him for this. I'm sorry, Mom. Don't call me, Mom. How dare you? Hurry up and kneel down. Linda James was fuming. I had been unsure earlier whether I had misunderstood Finn Taylor, but it now seems like I'm not maligning you. You admitted to it yourself. Linda James had seen just how much her daughter loved her husband. Since you dared to bully my daughter, I'll teach you a lesson. Finn Taylor glanced around him. There were many onlookers. I would surely lose all dignity if I were to kneel down here. He let out a wry smile. Compared to my dignity, Yvette Larson is much more important to me. I had already died 3 years ago. I had died the moment my mother personally kicked me out of Peregrine Hall. I'm only alive because of Yvette. She had been reluctant to marry him, but I still remember how Linda James had arranged for me to sleep downstairs on our wedding night. It was Yvette who had allowed me upstairs. Although I had slept on the floor in her bedroom, she had chosen to ruin her own reputation for my sake. Even though Linda James had forced me to sleep downstairs from the very next day, I have never forgotten what my wife has done for me. He bent down slowly into a kneel. Yvette Larson rushed over to support him before he could get down on his knees, preventing him from getting on the ground. Don't kneel, Mom, stay out of this. Yvette Larson didn't want to tell her mom the truth of the matter, fearing that she would worry. However, Yvette Larson's stutter made her mother even more suspicious. Yvette, don't worry, I'm here. You can tell me everything, I'll make the decision for you. Finn Taylor, did you hit my daughter? Otherwise, why would she be so afraid? Although Finn Taylor was willing to take the blame for not protecting his wife, he wasn't going to admit to beating her. Mom, I promise that I didn't hit Yvette. Linda James looked at him in disbelief. Is that so? Then, tell me why Yvette is stuttering and refusing to tell me about it. But Finn Taylor had no answer to that because even he had no idea what his wife had been through. All he knew was that he was to be blamed as long as his wife was upset. Mom, Finn Taylor didn't bully me. I was upset because of something else. Forget it, I'm going to work. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. With that, Yvette Larson got onto the front passenger seat. Finn Taylor followed behind and sat in the driver's seat. The car raced off toward the office. Linda Jameswo was left behind and didn't know whether to believe her daughter. She believed that her son-in-law had bullied her daughter, and nothing was going to convince her otherwise. Ellipsis. San Francisco, Old Western Hotel. This was a rather famous hotel in San Francisco, and it was decorated in a vintage style. As such, it attracted many who came dressed in retro fashion. Today, Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson were seated in one of their private rooms. Eleanor Larson glanced at her watch impatiently. Brother, I thought we agreed on meeting at 9. It's already 9:30. Why isn't that person here yet? Who am I meeting? It was true that Eleanor Larson was in a bit of a hurry today. After all, Alexander Scott was looking for her. She desperately hoped that she would be able to hook up with him, but her cousin Quince Larson stopped her before she could leave the house. He claimed that he had someone important for her to meet, yet she had been waiting for half an hour and still hadn't seen so much as that person's shadow. There's no hurry to meet that person. We can't hurry that person either, but I assure you that you'll be shocked once you see her. Who could that possibly be? Eleanor Larson glanced at her cousin suspiciously. Oh right, brother, I suddenly thought of something. What? Aside from you, there's still Quinn Larson in the third generation. Why did you support Quinn Larson being named as the CEO? Aren't you afraid that he'll snatch the position of family head away from you? Quince Larson couldn't help but laugh at his cousin's naivety. The Larson family's successor was decided a long time ago. Nobody else will be able to take that position but me. The Larson family's second generation was disqualified a long time ago. As for the third generation, Grandpa won't hand the family over to a woman, and Quinn and I are the only boys. Don't forget the scandal that Quinn Larson was involved in. Do you think that Grandpa will hand the family over to him? Eleanor Larson came to a sudden realization. That's right. Quinn Larson was a disgrace to the Larson family. Nobody knew who his biological father was. As family head, his identity had to be known to all. Unfortunately, there was no way of investigating Quinn Larson's background. It was a mess that could only be barely controlled. Even if it couldn't be controlled, they had to do their best to control it to the very end. Clink. Suddenly, the door was pushed open from the outside. Oh, you're both here. Eleanor Larson was dumbfounded when she caught a glimpse of the person walking in. Hilary Stone. No wonder Quince said that I'd be shocked to see her. Yes, Who would have expected the person who threw the whole family into a frenzy to suddenly return after 18 years? What, are you very surprised to see me? Hilary Stone looked at Eleanor Larson as she put her bag down. Of course, you shouldn't be here. Eleanor Larson was straightforward. Perhaps it was because she now had Alexander Scott backing her that she had gotten much bolder. Yes, it's true that I shouldn't be here because you're all so afraid of me and the secrets I'm keeping. The day I reveal all these secrets will mark the end of the Larson family. Ha ha ha. Hilary Stone wasn't afraid of Eleanor Larson at all. After all, she knew better than anyone else about what she had done at that time. The Larson family was terrified that she would speak up and turn the entire family into a joke. Are you threatening me? Eleanor Larson was pissed off by Hilary Stone, especially by her disgusting behavior. What's wrong? You don't seem to like me very much. Why don't you guess whether you and Quince are cousins or biological siblings? Hilary Stone laughed. It was a strange and unbridled one. You, Eleanor Larson nearly leapt up to punch Hilary Stone, but her cousin sat her back down. All right, stop it, let's talk about the eldest family. They're getting more powerful now, they even dare to go against Grandpa now. Quince Larson's gaze was as cold as ice. For some strange reason, what should have been mine seems to be getting out of my reach lately. The eldest branch of the Larson family also seems to be gaining momentum. Besides, that family is the only branch that hadn't been tainted by the scandal 18 years ago. Everything added up together really scares me. Brother, didn't you just say that you weren't worried? Eleanor Larson thought that it was strange that her cousin was contradicting himself. Just listen to the question you're asking. Do you know who was the one who spread the rumor that Yvette Larson and Finn Taylor don't get along? Eleanor Larson was stumped. Isn't that the truth? I was the one who spread that rumor and made a point to let Grandpa hear of it. I even spread it across San Francisco as well. As for Yvette and her husband, their relationship might not be as bad as we think. Eleanor Larson still didn't understand what that couple's relationship had to do with the Larson family's future successor. Fool, seeing that she had indeed not understood the situation, Quince Larson lashed out at her. Have you ever considered this? If Yvette Larson and Finn Taylor are doing fine and decide to have a child, do you think that child will be a Larson or a Taylor? Eleanor Larson seemed to be getting onto something, but she didn't know what to say. The old master will simply skip the third generation and hand the family over to the fourth generation. Anyway, it seems like the third generation isn't all that impressive either. Hilary Stone spoke up, her straightforwardness offending the cousins. However, she paid no heed to that. It was only then that Eleanor Larson came to a sudden realization. She suddenly thought of something. If I were to give birth to a child with Alexander Scott, would that child be a Larson or would he want? But after giving it some thought, she dismissed that idea. It's only because Finn Taylor is a matrilocal son-in-law that he'd agree to name that child a Larson. In fact, I don't even know if Alexander Scott would be willing to have a child with me. Of course, it would be impossible for that child to be a Larson in any case. Quince Larson, you're really a piece of trash. How could you be the most likely candidate to succeed the old master? You're being suppressed by Yvette Larson. Hilary Stone never minced her words. Of course, Quince Larson was annoyed. Can you stop being sarcastic? Just tell us if you have a plan. Hilary Stone sneered. Even if I have a plan, I'm not going to do anything. Quinn is the company's CEO now. He's going to be the family head anyway, so why should I help you? Quince Larson slammed the table. Hilary Stone, did you call us here today to make a fool out of us? Previously, Hilary Stone had taken the initiative to approach Quince Larson, saying that she could help him get the position of family head. This was why Quince Larson had agreed to this meeting. He had never expected to land up in such a situation. Quince Larson, you're really childish. Tides turn all the time. When I approached you, Quinn Larson wasn't the CEO yet. However, he is now. You were the one who pushed him into that position. Quince Larson was furious. Hilary Stone, don't forget what position Quinn Larson has. It's impossible for him to inherit the position of family head. Nobody can be absolutely sure about that. If your dad, her dad, and all the other Larson family elders decide to support Quinn Larson, who do you think the old master will choose? Quince Larson's gaze was filled with cold, murderous intent. Hilary Stone is terrifying. This means that she had never broken off contact with my father Franklin Larson or with my third uncle, Frederick Larson, all these years. Perhaps the Larson family elders are still in contact with her. This woman is a social butterfly. How much damage does she want to do to the Larson family? Do you know what I want to do the most? Hilary Stone sneered. I guess you must want to kill me. All right, If you were capable of doing so, you wouldn't be sitting here talking to me. Stop putting on an act in front of me. I'm not scared of you. Hilary Stone was much more shameless than Quince Larson. Quince Larson could only blame himself for being unlucky for meeting such a woman. Fine, you're really vicious. But just wait and see, the Larson family will definitely not land in your son's hands. Quince Larson got up and stomped off. Eleanor Larson's displeasure could be seen all over her face, and she picked up her bag and walked off in a huff as well. The first round of discussions between the Larson family's second, third, and fourth branches ended in a disaster. Ellipsis. Finn Taylor sent his wife to the office. As the car was parked there, he gripped her hand tightly. The atmosphere was cold as the couple remained silent. Ba-dump, ba-dump, ba-dump. Finn Taylor could hear his wife's heartbeat speeding up. Gulp. Yvette Larson could also hear her husband swallowing his saliva nervously. Both of them seemed to want to say something, but in the end, Yvette Larson got out of the car. He hadn't said anything. Finn Taylor could finally relax since he had seen his wife step into the office building. But now, he was raging as he headed to look for Merlin and Swallowtail. Gather at the peak of Pacific Heights. With that, he sped off. Although Pukwudgie was in a meeting with a client, he immediately put down his wine glass and rushed to the peak of Pacific Heights the moment he received the order. Wampus had been enjoying his refreshing cup of tea when he received the order. His tea was abandoned, and he also flew toward the peak of Pacific Heights. At that moment, Thunderbird had been waiting for Eleanor Larson's arrival for her to continue with her act. But the moment he received the notification, all of that flirting was thrown to the back of his mind. He threw his coat on and headed toward the peak of Pacific Heights. Horned Serpent had been singing in a karaoke lounge with many girls around him. Of course, those girls were reluctant to let him go after he read that message. Due to this, he sent them flying with a slap. Then, he rushed toward the peak of Pacific Heights as well. On the other hand, Merlin and Swallowtail were taking a stroll in the park. The pair hadn't met in a long while, and there were naturally many things they wanted to tell each other. Their relationship seemed more like that of a couple. Just then, they received an order from Finn Taylor. Neither of them had a good feeling about this. Both of them could feel that Master Peregrine was infuriated. Perhaps we have something to do with this. Although they had no evidence of it, they couldn't help but fear. Nonetheless, they headed for the peak of Pacific Heights. The peak of Pacific Heights. Finn Taylor stood with his arms by his side. He was truly enraged. As Pukwudgie, Wampus, Thunderbird, and Horned Serpent arrived one after another, they stood silently by the side, not daring to make a sound. They could all feel the strange atmosphere in the room. They had no idea what had happened, but the murderous intent that Master Peregrine exuded made it obvious just how serious this matter was. Finally, Merlin and Swallowtail arrived, and they silently took their places beside Horned Serpent. Both of them were drenched in sweat. It wasn't a result of the fatigue from running here, but a result of the fear deep within their souls. Along the way, the pair had already started looking into the reason Finn Taylor had suddenly gathered all of them. Indeed, the pair had found a clue. Yvette Larson had been bullied. "You're all here," said Finn Taylor calmly as he turned around. But none of them dared to speak up. "You're all still alive." His words took a sudden turn, and his tone was now chilling. The six of them immediately got down on their knees, not daring to look up. "Great, you're all alive. I thought that you were all dead." These words terrified all six of them, especially the four guardians, because they had no idea what had even happened. Merlin hesitantly took a step forward before hitting his head against the ground. "Master Peregrine, I deserve to die." Merlin was a man and was willing to bear sole responsibility for everything. He wasn't going to drag anyone down with him. He knew that it was entirely his fault. Master Peregrine had treated him well and had ordered him to stay in the neighborhood to protect Yvette Larson at all times. However, there were many times she wasn't in the neighborhood. At those times, there was no need for him to follow her. But this time, Yvette Larson's incident had indeed occurred within the neighborhood. There was no running away from it. Finn Taylor sneered, "You should thank the heavens that nothing happened to my wife. If anything had happened to her, you'd already be a corpse by now." To Finn Taylor, Yvette Larson was his everything. Everything he did was for her sake. If anything happened to her, he would go crazy and would do anything to take revenge for her. "Investigate it. I want you to find the culprits by today. Otherwise, you don't need to come back either." Finn Taylor spread his palms to reveal the Master Peregrine order. This was the first time Finn Taylor had ever used it. The four guardians, Merlin, and Swallowtail were dumbfounded, and their faces drained of blood. Nobody had expected him to use the Master Peregrine order. But because the Master Peregrine order had been invoked, none of them dared to slack off. They quickly rushed off. Within the next hour, the entire network system in San Francisco crashed. Everyone realized that they were no longer able to access the internet. Of course, it wasn't because any lines had been damaged. It was only because the men from Peregrine Hall were using it that it had crashed. They were searching all over San Francisco. That's right, can you get a clearer image of these people? Very quickly, the 6 of them got hold of the surveillance footage of Yvette Larson's accident. There were a total of 5 beggars, and their faces were currently being analyzed by big data. This was a project on a massive level. It would take a few days at the very least, even up to months or years to look for them. But they didn't have that much time, all they had was a day. Horned Serpent, Pukwudgie called out. He was actually a computer genius. It was just that many years had gone by without him having any chance to show off his abilities. Because of that, many had already forgotten how he had joined Peregrine Hall in the first place. In fact, even he had almost forgotten about it. It seems like I'm going to make my comeback today. Horned Serpent took his seat in front of the computer, his fingers flying over the keyboard gently. His fingers were naturally longer than an average person's. This meant that he typed faster than average too. Tap, tap, tap. The only sound that could be heard in the room was Horned Serpent's fingers tapping against the keyboard. Everyone held their breaths, not daring to make a sound for fear that they would disturb him. This concerned all of their lives. Tap, tap, tap. His fingers continued tapping on the keyboard. Time had passed without anyone realizing it. 3 hours had passed when Horned Serpent suddenly stopped. Everyone rushed to look at the computer screen, but there was nothing. Just as they were about to voice their doubts, Horned Serpent finally made one last move and tapped on the spacebar key. 5 faces then appeared on the screen. Everyone's eyes scanned these 5 faces. They took a good look at each of these faces. Horned Serpent's fingers then flew across the keyboard once again, and a map appeared on the screen. 5 red circles appeared on the map as well. These 5 circles showed these 5 people's exact locations. Horned Serpent, stay here. The rest of you, get going. We'll each catch one of them. As the head of the 4 guardians, Pukwudgie quickly made a decision and gave his orders. Upon receiving their orders, Wampus, Thunderbird, Merlin, and Swallowtail immediately set off. Of course, Horned Serpent wasn't slacking off either. He provided the other 5 with details of the culprits' locations in real time. With this information, catching them didn't pose much of a problem. Although those beggars had been vicious and fierce toward Yvette Larson, they behaved like worms the moment Peregrine Hall's men showed up. Very quickly, the culprits were dragged up to Pacific Heights. The 6 of them shared a glance. Although they had caught the culprits, they still felt a little guilty. After all, it was true that Yvette Larson had nearly gotten hurt this time. Master Peregrine had already told them that Merlin would have been a corpse a long time ago if his wife had gotten the slightest cut. To be honest, not a single one of them doubted him. They were sure that Master Peregrine was capable of doing that. What should we do? They all turned toward Pukwudgie. He was the most senior of them all, so he had to come up with an idea. However, Pukwudgie was a mess as well. He didn't know what to do in front of Master Peregrine. I'll take responsibility for my actions. I'll take full blame for everything after we hand these people over. Merlin spoke up, and he took the blame for everything as usual. The rest seemed to want to say something but remained silent in the end. All 6 of them headed toward Pacific Heights with the 5 culprits in tow. There, Finn Taylor was admiring the view of San Francisco. I've been bullied my whole life, and now, I can't even protect my own wife. Am I too weak, or does everyone think that they can bully my wife? I can be a matrilocal son-in-law and let my wife bully me, but that's no excuse for all of you to challenge my limits. Finn Taylor was still deep in thought when Pukwudgie and the rest arrived. Master Peregrine, we've caught them. Even though Pukwudgie and the rest already had the culprits, they couldn't help but feel anxious. Merlin stepped forward. Master Peregrine, this was my fault alone. Please don't blame any of the others. Finn Taylor ignored both of them and turned to the 5 beggars. Who was it? Who instructed you to stop Yvette Larson's car? Finn Taylor had a photographic memory. He was sure that he had never seen these 5 beggars before. This meant that they bore no grudges against him. It seemed like there was only one possibility: they had been hired by someone. Ha! Who are you? You're just a useless matrilocal son-in-law. How dare you try to make us talk? Their boss was stubborn. Finn Taylor simply picked up his dagger and ran it across that person's neck. As that beggar's blood dripped down, he quickly lost all signs of life. At this sight, it wasn't just the 4 other beggars who were stunned. Even the four guardians and the rest were shell-shocked. Master Peregrinuho had always been warm, and even allowed the Larson family to bully him was actually such a brutal man. As long as it didn't involve his wife, Finn Taylor turned a blind eye to it. However, these beggars had chosen to help someone else hurt Yvette Larson. That left Finn Taylor with no other choice. All talk, it was a woman. One of the beggars was so frightened that he had peed himself. He quickly told Finn Taylor everything he knew. A woman, an image flashed past his mind. Eleanor Larson, Hilary Stone, or someone else from the Larson family. Who was it? Oh right, that woman isn't young, but she was very well dressed and maintained her appearance well too. Based on this description, Finn Taylor came to the conclusion that it had been Hilary Stone. Is this revenge for rejecting her? Fine, great. Except for him, throw everyone off the cliff. The other three beggars' faces turned ashen the moment they heard that. They begged Finn Taylor to forgive them. They had been driven into a corner. In fact, they hadn't even hurt Yvette Larson. But Finn Taylor remained indifferent. That's right, they didn't hurt Yvette Larson, and they should be thankful that they didn't. Otherwise, they won't be the only ones dead. I'd have killed their families 10 generations. Merlin knew in his heart that he had committed a grave mistake this time. Of course, he wasn't going to let Master Peregrine handle such trivial matters personally. He grabbed hold of those three people and brought them to the edge of the Pacific Heights cliff. Then, he really threw them off the cliff. The only beggar who had spoken up couldn't help but feel like a stone was weighing down on his heart. He felt eternally grateful that he had made the right decision to speak up earlier, otherwise, he'd have been thrown off the cliff as well. If one was thrown off this hill, death was certain. Horned Serpent, have you gotten the surveillance footage? Yes, I found it. How many hours passed after they stopped Yvette Larson's car until I appeared? 1 hour and 16 minutes. Horned Serpent had a good memory when it came to numbers. Alright, 1 hour and 16 minutes. From now on, stab him once every minute. I want him dead in exactly 1 hour and 16 minutes. If he dies any earlier or later than that, just wait and see what I'll do to you. Finn Taylor handed the dagger to Merlin before heading out. He had no interest in dealing with a nobody. The one he wanted revenge on was Hilary Stone. How dare that woman set her sights on Yvette? Since she dared to do that, she'd better be prepared to bear the consequences. There was a club in San Francisco named Red Sage Club. It was named after the herb that was said to heal one's body, but everyone knew very well what kind of dealings this club was involved in. Finn Taylor walked straight into the club. Sir, are you a member here? Seeing that Finn Taylor hadn't registered at the front desk and was heading right in, the receptionist tried to stop him. But the manager stopped her before she could step forward. Shut up. The receptionist glanced at her manager in bewilderment. Ma'am, he doesn't have a member card. He shouldn't be allowed in. The receptionist was confused as to why her manager had stopped her. What she didn't know was that her manager was experiencing a surge of emotions in her heart. Just a few days ago, the manager had been at the bank and had personally witnessed Finn Taylor taking out his Peregrine card. She hadn't said a word about that incident to anyone. What a joke. If I said anything about that, I would probably be dead by now. But I never expected to see that legendary Peregrine card holder in Red Sage Club. However, what is such a big shot doing here? She didn't dare to go up to stop Finn Taylor. In fact, she even arranged for her subordinates to stay out of his way. Due to this, Finn Taylor headed right up to the top floor without being stopped. The elevators didn't go up to the top floor. The elevators could only bring guests to the second floor. But there weren't even stairs from there to the top floor. However, Finn Taylor didn't care about that. As he walked out of the elevator, he passed through a long corridor before finally stopping in front of a bonsai plant. He moved the pot. Crank, crank, crank. A massive hidden door appeared in front of Finn Taylor. He opened it to find stairs in front of him. He walked up the stairs, finally arriving at the top floor. Then, he kicked each door open. As each door was kicked open, unspeakable scenes came into sight one after another. There was a flurry of curses and tons of people kicking up a fuss, but Finn Taylor ignored them all. Finally, he kicked open the last door. In there was the protagonist he was looking for. The moment Quinn Larson caught sight of Finn Taylor, he was so frightened that he fell from the bed. Finn Taylor has found out about my secret. What if Finn Taylor tells others about this? What will I do? At this point in time, he felt utterly humiliated. Yet, Finn Taylor acted as though he hadn't seen Quinn Larson's expression at all. He walked forward, grabbed hold of the naked Quinn Larson, and dragged the latter out as though he was dragging the corpse of a dead dog out of the room. He then dragged Quinn Larson into the elevator and out of the club. When Finn Taylor arrived at the front desk, the receptionist nearly let out a scream, but she managed to cup her mouth. To be honest, the receptionist still had no clue as to why her manager was behaving so strangely. If word gets out about this, Red Sage Club is done for. In the past, everyone has always settled their grievances within Red Sage Club itself. That receptionist was right. It was true that their clients had done that in the past to maintain the club's reputation and business. However, it was different this time. A few security officers foolishly jumped into action, but the manager shot them a sharp gaze, causing everyone to freeze on the spot. They had no idea why their manager was telling them to stop, but since she had already given her orders, there was no need for them to go against her. "Sir, you're completely ignoring the rules of Red Sage Club. Do you look down on me?" Unfortunately, someone chose to step in just then. The one who had spoken was none other than Red Sage Club's boss, Samuel Sanders. He was the biological younger brother of the Sanders family head, Grant Sanders. Given his identity, Samuel Sanders could get anything done in San Francisco without even lifting a hand. Because he had received news that someone was making a din in Red Sage Club, he had rushed over immediately. That was why everyone had just seen him step in and try to stop Finn Taylor. The female manager was shaken. She didn't know whether she should go up to stop her boss. In the end, she chose to act as though nothing had happened. This is a fight between two big shots. If I interfere in it, there is only one possible ending to it. I would get killed after getting caught in the middle. Scram. Finn Taylor was still livid at this moment. This has nothing to do with Red Sage Club. If the other party is smart, I naturally won't make things difficult for the other party either. But if the other is foolish and tries to stop me, I'll have to let the other party experience the consequences of stopping me. Oh, aren't you going to let that person go now that I'm stepping in? Does he not recognize me? Otherwise, why isn't he letting that guy go even after I told him to? As such, Samuel Sanders plainly announced his identity. Even if he's never seen me before, he must have heard of me, right? He'll have to let that person go then. I don't care who you are. Go away. Samuel Sanders had only told Finn Taylor his name because he didn't want to waste any time. Of course, Finn Taylor didn't want to waste any time either. Samuel Sanders shut his eyes and gestured for a white-haired elder to come forward. His name was Cedric James, head of the martial arts James family. In recent years, their family had been on a decline, but Samuel Sanders had spotted Cedric James at a martial arts meet. As such, Samuel Sanders had spent a huge fortune to keep Cedric James by his side. The martial arts that the James family practiced emphasized the use of the whole body as a weapon. Cedric James threw a curved punch, a whoosh sounding as his fist broke through the air. Scram. However, Finn Taylor couldn't even be bothered to fight back. He simply shouted at the other. For some reason, Cedric James felt as though his whole body was being crushed. He flew back and slammed against the glass door, shattering the glass door into bits and pieces. In an instant, the entire club fell into dead silence. Cedric James lay there as if he were a corpse. Even Samuel Sanders's expression soured visibly. He had never imagined the person in front of him to be so vicious. Finn Taylor casually flung Quinn Larson to the ground. I had initially wanted to find a place to teach Quinn Larson a lesson, but that doesn't seem necessary now. I'll do it right here. Do you have a camera? Finn Taylor looked up at Samuel Sanders, his eyes void of life. But Samuel Sanders felt a chill run down his spine from that gaze. Finn Taylor's eyes made him seem as though he was the devil. Oh, of course, Samuel Sanders was terrified, and he dared not even put on airs as a member of the Sanders family. He was nothing more than a lackey now. Take a full set of photos of him. Finn Taylor found himself a chair, took a seat, and started ordering Samuel Sanders around. If this had happened in the past, Samuel Sanders would have flared up and beaten anyone who dared to speak to him in this manner. But now, he didn't even dare to utter a word of complaint. Under everyone's watchful gazes, he started taking a full set of photographs of Quinn Larson. Because Finn Taylor had dragged the ladder down, he was completely naked with not even a piece of clothing on him. Finn Taylor reached out, and Samuel Sanders obediently handed the camera over. The former then flipped through the photos. Samuel Sanders's photography skills weren't bad to say the least. He had managed to capture everything he should have. Finn Taylor strolled up to Quinn Larson as he held the camera. Then, he stepped on the latter's face. You'd better smarten up, otherwise, I can't promise you that these photos won't make their way around. Finn Taylor knew that the Larson family's old master Joseph Larson cared most about his family's reputation. If Quinn Larson's photos were to be leaked, he wouldn't even have to consider inheriting the Larson family. In fact, the family's fourth branch might even be kicked out of the Larson family. Nobody in the Larson family would allow such a blemish to exist. After kicking Quinn Larson, Finn Taylor left Red Sage Club with his camera. It was only when Finn Taylor disappeared into the distance that Samuel Sanders finally let out a sigh of relief. Samuel Sanders had no idea who Finn Taylor was, but he did have a good understanding of Cedric James's skills. He had seen Cedric James break a 10-centimeter thick steel board with his own eyes. That was why he had spent so much to keep Cedric James by his side. However, the person he had just met had casually beaten Cedric James up. How powerful is that person? Samuel Sanders had no idea and didn't even dare to think about it. Red Sage Club's boss pointed at everyone present. Don't you dare speak of this incident. I'll kill anyone who does. Red Sage Club's workers naturally knew how vicious Samuel Sanders was. Following that warning, they quickly nodded, not daring to spill even the slightest detail of the incident. Only that manager was still a little dazed. She was the only one amongst all of them who knew of Finn Taylor's status as a Peregrine card holder. She was wondering how to look for that person. If I could get into a relationship with that person, even if just as a mistress or a fling, I would have more than enough for the rest of my life. Ellipsis. After leaving Red Sage Club, Finn Taylor headed to a darkroom to develop one of the photos that had been taken. He then mailed it out. Of course, it was addressed to Hillary Stone. This was Finn Taylor's warning to the latter. He hoped that this woman would understand respect. After doing all that, he headed to the Larson Corporation. It wouldn't be long before his wife got off work. By the time Finn Taylor arrived, his wife had just left the office. Finn Taylor had bought a bouquet of flowers, wanting to give his wife a surprise. But as she received the bouquet, her face was filled with worry. She handed him a card. Finn Taylor took a look at it. It was an invitation. A tea party host was also none other than Grant Sanders. Finn Taylor narrowed his eyes as he glanced at the invitation. Get in. Once the couple was in the car, Finn Taylor started asking about the invitation. Did the Sanders family send this over? Yes, they said it's a tea party. All the young entrepreneurs in San Francisco have been invited, but I'm the only one in the Larson family who received the invitation. Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson must be terribly jealous. Sigh. They did come to my office to leave some sarcastic comments, but I'd much rather they receive this than me. The Sanders family isn't one to be trifled with. This invitation spells trouble, just like how we had nearly gotten into trouble the previous time. Who knows if we'll be able to return after going? But if we don't go, we'll offend the Sanders family and give them an excuse to make things difficult for us. What a great strategy. Even Finn Taylor couldn't help but respect the Sanders family for this move. Are you allowed to bring any family members? Yvette Larson widened her eyes and stared at her husband. Do you want to tag along? No, it's too dangerous. The last time. That's right, I went with you last time, and we returned safely, didn't we? The tea party is tomorrow. Alright, let's go get outfits for ourselves. We'll attend that party dressed to the nines tomorrow. Yvette Larson was rendered speechless. She was worried sick. What am I supposed to do about this tea party? But Finn Taylor looked indifferent, as though he hadn't taken the matter to heart at all. That was absolutely true. Finn Taylor indeed hadn't taken it to heart. The so-called first family in San Francisco was nothing more than a joke in his eyes. It wouldn't even take much for him to ruin the whole Sanders family. It was just that he didn't want to expose his true identity that quickly. More importantly, the Sanders family didn't mean much. Destroying them wouldn't bring him much benefit anyway. It was best not to alert the enemy to his actions for the time being. The only reason Finn Taylor had chosen not to touch the Sanders family yet was to lure Colorado's Sanders tribe out. The 8 tribes. How interesting. While Yvette Larson hadn't intended to buy anything at first, her mood completely changed once they entered the mall. After some time, the couple walked into a boutique selling vintage dresses. As the couple walked in, they headed for the same dress. It was the most eye-catching piece in the entire boutique. It gave off the vibes that only princesses were fit to wear this dress. This one's not bad. Finn Taylor reached out and was about to touch the dress when a sales assistant spoke up. Sir, you aren't allowed to touch any of our dresses. Finn Taylor sneered. Before entering, I observed several customers browsing. They had clearly touched these dresses. You obviously look down on me and think that I can't afford this. Oh, are you not letting me touch it because you think that I won't be able to afford it? Finn Taylor was slightly annoyed. I went to great lengths to bring my wife out to try and lift her mood, but you're making me feel uneasy now. Sir, it's a misunderstanding. This is a rule in our boutique. We treat all customers equally. Is that so? Finn Taylor sneered and then walked up to the reception to press a few keys. Surveillance footage then popped up on the screen. It was the footage of the shop assistant serving other customers earlier in the day. Those customers were clearly touching the dresses in the footage. This was a slap in that sales assistant's face. Oh, I'm sorry, she's new and insensible. Sir, please don't get upset. I'll apologize to you and make it up to you. Seeing that an argument was going to break out, a manager stepped in. She was trying to defuse the situation with an apology, but Finn Taylor had already suffered for the entire day. He, of course, wasn't going to let the other party off with a mere apology. You have no right to speak to me. Get your boss here. In an instant, the manager didn't know what to do. If I were to call my boss over, that sales assistant would probably get into trouble. Worse still, I would probably be dragged into the matter. As such, she stood rooted at the spot, trying to salvage the situation. Sir, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. We'll definitely lecture her and train her well. Do you like this dress? You have good taste. The manager hadn't even finished her sentence before Finn Taylor shoved all the racks to the ground. The dresses fell to the ground one by one. Do you not understand me? Get your boss here. The manager trembled in fear. She knew that she no longer had control over the situation. If she continued trying to salvage it, it would only go in a downward spiral from here. In the end, she had no choice but to make a call to her boss. Within 10 minutes, her boss arrived. But Finn Taylor had never expected to see someone following behind the boss. It was the manager of Red Sage Club. They didn't seem like a couple but siblings. Brother, are you trying to destroy my boutique? The boss took in his surroundings, realizing that the racks were all on the ground. Before Finn Taylor could even say a word, the woman beside him stomped on his foot. How could you speak to a customer like that? Get lost. That female manager stepped forward and said with a smile, Sir, I'm so sorry. This was our fault. She pointed at the sales assistant. You're fired. Then, she pointed to the boutique's manager. You're fired too. The boss stared dazedly at his younger cousin. After all, they had a good relationship with his cousin. What's gotten into her? Why did she fire both of them at once? Why is she being so vicious? Sister, brother, you'd better listen to me. Otherwise, I'll tell Auntie about all those illegal dealings you've been involved in. Because of this threat, the boss didn't dare to make a peep. It seemed like the female manager had a mountain of evidence against him. But Finn Taylor wasn't at all interested in that family's problems. I don't care if you fire them, but I want her to apologize to my wife. The female manager nodded. She walked up to that sales assistant and slapped the latter in the face. Lily, you'd better come clean about this. Otherwise, I can't promise you that you'll walk out unscathed. Lily, the manager, and even the female manager's cousin were dumbfounded by this. What's gotten into her today? It feels like she's going to swallow someone up whole. But the female manager didn't want to swallow anyone. All she wanted was for Lily to apologize. By this time, Lily was also scared stiff. With the female manager leading her, she dazedly walked up to make an apology. However, she had never expected the female manager to kick her in the knee. Lily slouched over and fell onto the ground in a kneel. Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath. Finn Taylor couldn't help but marvel. What a vicious woman. Hello, sir. I'm so sorry about everything. You must want to buy this dress for your wife. You have really good taste. As a show of our apology, we would like to give this dress to you for free. The female manager's actions stumped her cousin. This dress costs at least $3,000, and she said that she was going to give it to him for free. No, he was about to speak up when his cousin glared at him, scaring him into silence. Hello, sir. My name is Forrest Clark. Let's exchange numbers. I'll send this dress to your house personally. Finn Taylor had been thinking of kicking up a fuss, but he didn't feel at ease doing so given Forrest Clark's attitude. Forget it, let's go with that. Without giving it much thought, he exchanged numbers with Forrest Clark and let the latter know his address. He even insisted on it being delivered that very day. Of course, Forrest Clark was extremely respectful toward him. Even after walking out, the couple couldn't believe what had just happened. It was true that they had been at fault to begin with, but Forrest Clark had behaved so strangely. No matter how much the couple thought about it, they couldn't wrap their heads around why it had turned out this way. Of course, it wasn't just Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson who didn't understand Forrest Clark's behavior. Even the latter's cousin, Kevin Smith, had no idea why she had done so. No, doesn't that dress cost at least $3,000? How could you just give it away for free? Forrest Clark pouted and rolled her eyes at her cousin. Take this, pay for it with this card. Kevin James was still confused as he took the card from his cousin. You're paying for it? Of course. Forrest Clark, what's gotten into you? But she couldn't be bothered to reply to him. She knew what an important figure Finn Taylor was. Although she had lost about $3,000 today, she had gotten the latter's number. This meant that she'd have the chance to get in contact with him in the future. A Peregrine card holder was worth at least $1 billion. Then, $3,000 wouldn't even matter to her. Of course, it was too shameful to talk about this. As such, Forrest Clark didn't try to explain herself. Ellipsis. Why did that person give us the dress for free? Yvette Larson pointed at the boutique in confusion. I don't know. Who cares? We'll just take it. Even Finn Taylor had no idea what had happened. The only explanation he had was that the other party had gotten terrified that he would kick up a fuss in the boutique after witnessing what he had done previously. As such, she had chosen to give him that dress to keep him silent. After strolling around for a while longer, the couple returned home. Forrest Clark happened to be sending the dress over right then. She made a call to Finn Taylor to say that she had arrived at the entrance to the neighborhood. After letting his wife know, he headed out to pick the dress up. Forrest Clark was dressed in a very thin shirt. It was so thin that one could practically feel her body while standing at a close distance. Hello, Mr. Taylor. Here's your dress. Finn Taylor simply picked the dress up and walked off, not even saying a word to her. When the former had walked away, Forrest Clark stomped her feet furiously. I wore this on purpose, but he hadn't even spared me a glance. Am I not pretty enough? Is my body not tempting enough? Humph, men are all basts, but I don't believe you, you're just putting on an act because we're too close to your house. If I could just invite him out on a date, I'll definitely find a way to get into a relationship with him. Upon returning home, Finn Taylor quickly got his wife to try on the dress. But Yvette was in no hurry. However, Finn Taylor was insistent, so she had no choice but to change into it. The dress was beautiful, but she was even more stunning. Finn Taylor had already mentally prepared himself, but he was dumbstruck by her beauty as she walked out. It was hard to hide his surprise. Of course, Yvette Larson was pleased with what she was seeing. Is it nice? Although she already knew the answer, she still posed that question. All women were like that. They wanted to hear it for themselves even though they already knew the answer. Yes, it's really beautiful. Finn Taylor's answer satisfied his wife. All right, I'll wear this to the party tomorrow then. I'll stun everyone there. Upon talking about the party, Yvette Larson's expression visibly darkened. It's the most prominent family of San Francisco Sanders family we're talking about. The host is also the family head, Grant Sanders. No matter how I look at it, I feel that going to this tea party is no different from entering a lion's den. If I had a choice, I'd never attend it. Unfortunately, she didn't have a choice. Ellipsis. Night fell, and dawn broke. By the time dawn broke the next day, Yvette Larson had already gotten up and was getting dressed. It was much simpler for Finn Taylor. He simply chose a suit for himself. When Yvette Larson spotted that suit, she froze. It was the suit that her spouse had worn at their wedding. To be honest, it was a very ordinary suit that she had thought her husband had thrown away a long time ago. She had never expected him to still have it. It seemed like he had been waiting to surprise her with it. How deeply does he actually love me? Very quickly, the couple finished their preparations. After having their breakfast, Finn Taylor drove toward the Sanders family's residence with his wife in the front passenger seat. It was their second time there. Last time, they had been dragged to the Sanders family residence. This time, they were going of their own volition. Although the two visits seemed different, each was no less dangerous than the other. In fact, given Grant Sanders's personality, Finn Taylor was sure that this wasn't just a simple tea party. By the time Finn Taylor and his wife arrived at the Sanders family's gate, Yosh Sanders was waiting there to welcome the guests. A cold gaze flashed past Yosh Sanders's eyes the moment he caught sight of Finn Taylor, but it disappeared instantly. Yosh Sanders turned toward Yvette Larson. Oh, you're here, Yvette. This way, please. Yvette Larson nodded and thanked him, then walked into the garden with her husband. Oh right, did Clarine receive an invitation? Finn Taylor suddenly remembered about her and wondered why the Sanders family had invited his wife but not Clarine Landon. Clarine is being held captive. It was just a casual question, but he had been led in on such a huge secret. Captive? What happened? Was it the Sanders family? No, but also yes. What happened? It's because of the Sanders family. Clarine's mother offered her up for marriage to the Sanders family, but she refused. That's why her mother locked her up. Clarine's mother, Cassandra Campbell, Finn Taylor had met her. She was indeed an impressive woman. Let's go to the Landon family's house after this tea party, Finn Taylor told his wife blandly. Yvette Larson had no idea what he had up his sleeves, but she simply nodded. No matter what her significant other was going to do, she was going to ride it out with him. Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson walked forward, and a servant from the Sanders family approached them to show the way. Ms. Larson, this way, please. Although he was a servant of the Sanders family. His status was naturally much higher than an average person's. As such, he didn't even care about Finn Taylor. But the latter didn't take that to heart either. After all, he had been ignored many times over the past 3 years. One more time wouldn't mean much. As long as he had his lover by his side and had her understanding and love, nothing else mattered to him. That servant glanced at the couple from the side of his eyes. It's annoying to see him holding Yvette Larson's hand. Who's Finn Taylor? He's just a useless matrilocal son-in-law joke in San Francisco. What right does he have to be married to Yvette Larson? Yvette Larson had been betrothed to our master, Yosh Sanders. But now, she's married to someone who can't even compare to our master. Of course, I'm different. I'm just a servant, but maybe Yvette Larson will help me once she gets a divorce from Finn Taylor. Of course, he dared not voice his thoughts out. Whether it was the Sanders family or the Larson family, he couldn't afford to offend anyone. He led the couple to a garden, where many tables had been set up. On each of the tables was a chessboard, where checkmate formations had been arranged. By now, many guests had already arrived and were gathered in the garden. They gathered around to examine the chessboard formation, wanting to give the game a go. Of course, their expressions made it obvious that most of them had failed in solving the puzzle. Ms. Larson, please mingle around for now. The tea party will begin soon, someone will inform you once it begins. With that, the servant took his leave. As he did so, Finn Taylor noticed a sinister smile on his face. Although he had concealed it well and wiped that smile off his face in an instant, the latter's eyes were sharp. Nothing would get past his eyes. Although Finn Taylor remained calm, he could tell that something was amiss. It seems like something is indeed going to happen, but even I can't put my finger on what it is. As he glanced around, Finn Taylor noticed that the garden was filled with young people. Seeing her husband's confused gaze, Yvette Larson started introducing them to him. That's the young master of the Craig family. That's the young master of the Smith family. That's the young master of the Kleina family. As Yvette Larson continued, her husband's gaze darkened. He realized that they all had one commonality: these people were all the most likely successors of their families. If the Sanders family does anything to these people, almost all the prominent families in San Francisco will have wasted decades of effort and resources on raising their successors. It would be a crushing blow. Crank, crank, crank. Just then, the gate to the garden was shut. There was no longer an exit out of the garden. Oh no, Finn Taylor yelled out. Bang, bang, bang. Just then, someone started throwing torches into the garden one after another. Just as Finn Taylor had thought, the Sanders family was trying to kill all of them. This so-called tea party was just a cover. What the Sanders family was trying to do was wipe out all the prominent family's successors. Without any successors, these families would definitely crumble once the elders passed on and the family was handed to the younger generation. After all, they would have no choice but to hand the family over to their second choices. Naturally, the family would fall into shambles under their leadership. Then, there wouldn't be a single family that could come a close second to the Sanders family. The Sanders family had really gone all out this time. A torch landed right next to Yvette Larson. Sparks flew and landed on her dress. Ah, Yvette Larson's face drained of color as she shrieked non-stop, but her spouse was calm and collected. He simply extinguished the torch with his foot. Then, he brought his wife to a door. He gave it a kick, and the door quickly creaked open. However, there was a huge steel door waiting for them on the other side of the first door. It was obvious that this steel door hadn't originally been there. It had only been erected to prevent anyone from leaving. Finn Taylor tried to kick the door, but it refused to budge. Of course, it wasn't because the door was well made. Rather, it was because Finn Taylor wasn't even trying. Stay here. After instructing his wife to remain there, he walked back into the garden alone. He leaned against a marble table. It was the only marble table in the entire garden. Just like all the other tables, there was a chessboard set up on the table. Finn Taylor glanced at the formation on the board and sneered. Battle of a lifetime. This was a formation that had yet to be solved. It was named Battle of a Lifetime. It was named for how one could crawl their way out of the direst and most pressing of situations. This formation was similar to what was in front of him now. In the battle of a lifetime formation, the player wouldn't have any way out. But Finn Taylor didn't believe in that. He was going to find a way out. Everyone, listen to me if you want to live. Finn Taylor slammed the marble table. The whole garden was in chaos, but all noises suddenly ceased. Everyone turned their gazes toward Finn Taylor in the center. Finn Taylor. Finn Taylor. That sounds familiar. Which family are you from? Which family? He's that useless matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family. The one who said that Finn Taylor's name sounded familiar frowned. He felt as though he had been humiliated. You're just a useless matrilocal son-in-law. What right do you have to talk? Everyone has the right to talk except for you. Scram. Don't distract us from escaping. Finn Taylor sneered. Hee hee. Escape. If you guys could escape, you'd be gone by now. I'm the only one who can save you now. He then lifted up the marble table in front of everyone. Everybody's eyes widened, and their jaws dropped. That marble table probably weighs more than a ton. If he throws that table at the steel door, we might actually be able to escape. Finn Taylor, hurry up and smash that door to let us out. The person who had frowned at Finn Taylor earlier started begging the latter after seeing his prowess. I can save you, but I have a request. It's not overly demanding. I just want all of you to sign a contract with the Larson family after you escape. The minimum sum will be $1.5 million, and we'll split the profits 7-3. The Larson family gets 70%, and you'll get 30%. Everyone stared wide-eyed at Finn Taylor because of this ridiculous demand. The Sanders family wants to kill all of us, and the Larson family isn't any better off. How could you make such a ridiculous demand? If everyone present were to agree to it, it might very well elevate the Larson family's position to second place in all of San Francisco. There would then be two powerful and undefeatable families in San Francisco. The first would be the Sanders family. The second would be the Larson family. They would never get their day. No, I refuse. As expected, some people had started to pick on this ridiculous request. Finn Taylor had already expected such a situation. That doesn't matter to me. As long as one person disagrees, I'm not going to do anything. All of a sudden, the person who had tried to find fault in his demand became the object of everyone's hatred. What are you doing? Are you trying to kill all of us? If you're so capable, why don't you smash that door open for us? Eventually, that person could no longer stand up against the fury of all of San Francisco's prominent families. I was wrong. Will that do? All agree to it, okay. But Finn Taylor refused to forgive him. You were wrong. You aren't sincere enough. Why don't you kneel down to show me how sorry you feel? Finn Taylor, who are you? You're just the useless matrilocal son-in-law of the Larson family, a joke in San Francisco. If I kneel before you today, I won't be able to live another day. I'll never give in on this matter. But seconds later, he relented. It's better to be alive after all. Even if I refused, the others might beat me up and force me to kneel. That's if the fire doesn't take my life first. Of course, Finn Taylor wasn't an unreasonable person. Since that person had already gone down on his knees, it wasn't right for him to go back on his word. Finn Taylor picked up the marble table and flung it at the steel door. Everyone backed away, trying their best to shield themselves. Thud. The moment the door was broken down, everyone rushed out. Only Yvette Larson stood rooted to the ground, with her husband holding her hand. Given my understanding of the Sanders family, we might still have a chance of surviving if we don't escape. But if we did escape, we'll face much more than just the fire. It's best to let someone else test the waters first. Just as expected, Finn Taylor was right. Painful yelps sounded from outside. Yvette Larson turned to look at her husband beside her. He's changed. He's not as useless as everyone makes him out to be, he's actually intelligent. It seems like he already predicted all this, and that's why he didn't let me leave. He's hardworking and outstanding. The piercing shrieks went on for about half an hour before they finally died down. However, it seemed even more eerie after the noises ceased. Finn Taylor gripped his wife's hand tightly and said, "Don't worry." Yvette Larson knew full well that the true danger was still up ahead. Everything earlier was nothing more than a teaser. Tap, 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 footsteps sounded, and dozens of men appeared in front of Finn Taylor. He didn't recognize most of them, but he did recognize a few of them: Grant Sanders, Yosh Sanders, and William Sanders. They were stunned to see that it was Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson who were the last ones left in the garden. Grant Sanders clapped. Good, good, good. He repeatedly praised us, but what does that mean? Yvette, Yosh Sanders shouted Yvette Larson's name but didn't say anything else. Perhaps he had truly been in love with her, or perhaps he just couldn't let go of how Yvette Larson had once been his but now belonged to someone else. However, all these feelings he had once had for her disappeared with that word. Since Yvette Larson and her husband already witnessed such a bloody scene today, they can't leave the Sanders family's residence. William Sanders waved, and the few dozen men surrounded Yvette Larson and Finn Taylor. I can deal with all of you alone. Finn Taylor said something that sounded like a joke to all the Sanders family members. Wait there, I'll find a way out for us. Finn Taylor pointed at somewhere for his wife to go to. Her eyes brimmed with tears. She felt that it was completely impossible for her husband to defeat so many people at once. The Sanders family are clearly driving us into a corner, yet I have no other choice. I would only be a bother to my husband if I were to stay. With tears in her eyes, she headed to the area her husband had pointed out. Nobody in the Sanders family stepped forward to stop her. Naturally, this was an order from Yosh Sanders. Yosh Sanders hated Finn Taylor's guts. The whole of San Francisco knows that Yvette was mine, yet she married Finn Taylor 3 years ago. How ridiculous. It's because of him that I was humiliated and became a joke in so many people's eyes. I'm going to let Yvette watch her husband die in my hands. Kill him. The moment Yosh Sanders gave his order, dozens of men swarmed toward Finn Taylor. Every single one of them was a master of martial arts. If they had lived in ancient times, they would have been generals at the very least. Even now, they were impressive figures who would gain the respect of many. These people had one commonality: they killed without any hesitation. Perhaps they didn't even think much of killing nobodies like Finn Taylor. The moment Yosh Sanders gave his order, he shut his eyes. In his mind, it wouldn't take more than 10 seconds for Finn Taylor to die. He didn't want to witness such a bloody sight. Similarly, Grant Sanders shut his eyes. As expected, a blood-curdling scream was heard. But the noises that followed made both Grant Sanders and Yosh Sanders uneasy. The screams were getting more numerous. They obviously didn't come from Finn Taylor alone. Could it be? A thought surfaced in their minds. The moment they opened their eyes, they saw the men from the Sanders family groaning in pain on the ground. Their limbs had all been broken. As for Finn Taylor, he was sitting on top of someone, William Sanders. Neither Yosh Sanders nor Grant Sanders believed their eyes. It was a truly incredulous sight. It hasn't even been 10 seconds, yet Finn Taylor managed to defeat all of our men. What happened earlier? Grant Sanders and Yosh Sanders were now regretting their decision to close their eyes. They had initially done so to avoid witnessing the bloody scene, but that meant that they hadn't seen anything. Also, the victory had already been won. Grant Sanders and Yosh Sanders ran for their lives without a moment of hesitation. Finn Taylor sneered and casually kicked a rock that had been by his foot. It struck Grant Sanders right in the back. Grant Sanders had already been diagnosed with last-stage cancer. This stone pierced through his lungs. He was sure to be dead within 3 days. Just then, William Sanders drew a dagger and stabbed Finn Taylor while he was distracted. Finn Taylor could end Grant Sanders's life with just a mere stone. While misfortune may be a blessing in disguise, blessings may also bring about misfortunes. Never in his life would he have expected to be stabbed in the heart. He was towing the line between life and death too. In the corner, Yvette Larson opened her mouth as she witnessed the scene. Watch out! Unfortunately, it was too late. Yosh Sanders, who had also witnessed the scene, rejoiced inwardly. Good, kill him, Finn Taylor, you piece of trash. I want you dead. His heart was filled with murderous intent toward Finn Taylor. He wanted this man dead, with no way to make his comeback. But at that critical moment, with his life still on the line, Finn Taylor shot a needle into William Sanders's neck. The latter's eyes widened in disbelief. What's going on? He's clearly dying. I killed him. Why is he trying to kill me instead? As he grew weaker, he tried to use the last of his strength to drive that dagger deeper into Finn Taylor's heart to kill the latter. Unfortunately, he was only growing weaker with the passing of time. He slumped onto the ground, unmoving. William Sanders was dead, and Grant Sanders was on the verge of death. This was the eventual result of the Sanders family's tea party. As for Yosh Sanders, Finn Taylor had no intention of doing anything to him. Instead, he picked up his wife's hand and headed out. As he walked up to Yosh Sanders, he commented blandly, "It's time for the Sanders tribe to show themselves." It was just a short statement, but Yosh Sanders's facial expression froze. It was as though he had been fossilized in stone and couldn't move an inch. Nobody could imagine how stunned Yosh Sanders was at this moment. How could Finn Taylor possibly know about the Sanders tribe? Ellipsis. The Larson Corporation's conference room. All the higher-ups of the Larson family, Joseph Larson, Quince Larson, Eleanor Larson, and Quinn Larson, were present. Of course, the topic of their discussion was none other than the Sanders family's tea party. "Grandpa, why did the Sanders family only invite Yvette to their party? Something seems amiss." Quince Larson threw out that question and then started to explain it himself. "I think that the Sanders family is plotting something. After all, the Sanders family has already tried to make things difficult for us in the past. But this time, Yvette attended the party alone without even letting you know about it, Grandpa. She doesn't even care about you now." These words directly put Yvette Larson in conflict with her grandpa, Joseph Larson. As expected, Joseph Larson's expression visibly soured as soon as Quince Larson finished his sentence. "No, Yvette Larson couldn't have gone alone. She must have brought that piece of trash along with her." Eleanor Larson seemed to be rebutting her cousin but was actually trying to fan the flames. "This woman dared to bring Finn Taylor along. Let's wait and see what Grandpa does to her. She doesn't even care about Grandpa. How shameless." "Quinn, you're the CEO. What do you think about this?" Everyone else had already said their piece. Only Quinn Larson had remained silent the entire time. Quince Larson was a little confused because of this, and that was why he had called upon the latter. Me, I have nothing to say. I'm still so young, so it's best that Grandpa makes the decision." Finn Taylor had already caught a chink in his armor. It was only natural for him to remain silent. Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson glanced at each other, thinking that something was amiss. Just a few days earlier, Quinn had been fighting with us over control of the company. Why has he changed all of a sudden? After all, he's now the Larson Corporation's CEO. If Yvette Larson is gone, he'll gain the most out of it. Since he's unwilling to speak, we can't possibly force him to do so. "Grandpa, what are you going to do about this?" Joseph Larson's expression was dark, and he looked as though he was about to say something. But just then, the door was pushed open. "How is Grandpa planning to punish me?" It was Yvette Larson and Finn Taylor. Quince Larson couldn't help but hate them both. Grandpa nearly voiced out his thoughts. Of all times, Yvette Larson chose to enter just then. "Yvette, why are you back? Have you ever thought about how the family would feel about you doing this?" Yvette Larson sneered. "What a joke. I did nothing but attend a tea party. Which of the family's rules have I gone against this time?" "Yvette, how did the tea party go?" Unlike Quince Larson, the old master wanted to understand the situation first. "Grandpa, you previously told my parents that you wanted to chase my family out of the Larson family. Although you didn't go through with that, you hurt my parents. Have I ever done anything to wrong the Larson family? As for my parents, they're honest and down-to-earth people. If the Larson family's second generation hadn't gotten into that scandal, wouldn't my father have inherited the position of family head as the eldest son? Grandpa, let me ask you something. Do you think this is enough for an apology?" As soon as Yvette Larson finished her piece, her husband threw a huge stack of papers on the table. Before they could even take a look at what was written on the papers, Quince Larson cut in. "Yvette Larson, have you gone mad? What are you doing? You want Grandpa to apologize to your family?" Quince Larson didn't even bother looking at the papers. He simply picked out what he wanted to focus on. Yvette Larson must have gone mad. Why else would she do this? How could she ask Grandpa to apologize? "That's right, Yvette, you're getting more daring. You even dare to go against Grandpa now. You're asking Grandpa to apologize to you today. Are you going to chase us all out of the Larson family tomorrow?" Yvette Larson rolled her eyes at her cousin and pointed at the stack of papers on the table. "With these, I can get Grandpa to chase all of you out of the Larson family if I want to." Hiss. Everyone drew a breath in. Quinn Larson furtively retrieved a copy of the documents to take a look at them. The moment he read the contents, his expression visibly changed. Everyone had noticed this change in Quinn Larson's expression. As such, all attention was turned to those papers. Each of them picked a copy up and flipped them open. The words on the documents left them completely flabbergasted. Everyone turned to Yvette Larson in disbelief. Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson had left after killing William Sanders. After leaving, they realized that none of the successors of San Francisco's other prominent families was dead. However, they were on the verge of dying. As such, Finn Taylor forced them to sign the contracts. They had promised him to do so after all. Initially, those people wanted to go back on their word. What can you do about it anyway? I'm already out. But after Finn Taylor knocked a few of them unconscious, the others feared for their lives and finally relented. That was how they had managed to get the contracts signed. Finn Taylor had even inserted a clause on the last page, they would only sign the contract with Yvette Larson. If Yvette Larson was no longer involved in the project, the contract would be void. That was why everyone in the conference room was staring at her. Based on these contracts alone, the Larson family could very well become one of the two most prominent families in the whole of San Francisco. It could put them on the same level as the Sanders family, San Francisco's most prominent family. The problem lay in what was written on the last page. It was clearly stated that the contracts would be void unless Yvette Larson handled these projects. This meant that the Larson family had to choose between continuing as a second-tier family in San Francisco and handing the power over the family to Yvette Larson. If they chose the latter, they would immediately rise up the ranks to become the second most important family in all of San Francisco. "Grandpa, I'll give you 3 days to consider this," said Yvette Larson as she turned to leave with her husband. Seeing his cousin walking off into the distance, Quince Larson felt utterly helpless. Yvette had already taken me out of the previous project with the Sullivan family, but it was still possible for me to overcome that. As long as I worked hard, I still had a chance of pushing Yvette out of her position. But now, Quince Larson felt utterly helpless. Yvette Larson was too powerful, so powerful that he couldn't even catch up with her. If he wanted the slightest chance of doing so, he had only one choice. Upon leaving the Larson Corporation, Yvette Larson glanced at her husband. "Why didn't you put your signature on the contracts? You should know full well that your position in the Larson family would be completely different if you had put your name on the contracts instead." Finn Taylor's heart leapt with joy as he heard the concern in his wife's words. In the past 3 years, he had ignored everyone who had ridiculed and mocked him, all because Yvette Larson had stayed by his side. Even if the whole world looked down on him, it was enough as long as Yvette Larson loved him. "That's all right, it makes no difference since your name is there." Finn Taylor didn't try to explain his actions. Finn: "Yes, thank you." Yvette Larson had given her grandpa Joseph Larson 3 days to think it through. These 3 days felt as long as 3 years to the Larson family. Naturally, this piece of news was spread throughout the entire Larson family. Everyone was waiting to see how the old master would respond and what the matter's outcome would be. The second branch of the Larson family. Quince Larson stared out of the windows and at the falling leaves. He seemed to see himself in the fallen leaves on the ground. Just like those leaves, he was about to fall from grace in the Larson family. Franklin Larson walked over with a cigarette in his mouth. "Dad, do you really think Grandpa will hand the family over to Yvette?" "I don't know, but from my understanding of Dad, he probably will." This was pretty much what Quince Larson had expected. The old master's greatest wish was for the Larson family to prosper. "Dad, after Grandpa hands the family over to Yvette, he'll probably force her to give birth to a great-grandchild for him. That child has to be a Larson." Franklin Larson took a puff of his cigarette and nodded. "Quince, I know that you've been battling with them for years. This loss must be a huge blow to you." "Dad, I want to find that person." Quince Larson's words caused his father to drop the cigarette from his hands. "Quince." Franklin Larson seemed to have something to say, but he held himself back. The third branch of the Larson family. Frederick Larson and Eleanor Larson were eating, but the father-daughter duo was distracted. All of a sudden, Eleanor Larson asked, "Dad, how did Mom die?" Thump. Frederick Larson dropped his fork onto the table, his heart pounding furiously. "Dad, there have been countless rumors about the Larson family. Will you tell me the truth today?" Thud. Frederick Larson slammed the table with his fist. He was visibly fuming. "Just eat." But there was no stopping Eleanor Larson. "Grandpa will probably hand the family over to Yvette tomorrow. I don't understand. I'm prettier than her, and her husband is a matrilocal son-in-law. Why should she get to take over the reins? I've tried very hard to beat her. Do you mean that I have to burrow my head just because of whatever shameful things you did in the past?" Eleanor Larson was starting to get hysterical. On the other hand, Frederick Larson fell silent. "I didn't kill your mom. Do you mean she committed suicide?" Eleanor Larson pressed him for a reply, but he refused to answer the question. "Dad, let me ask you one last question. Who is Quinn Larson's father?" Frederick Larson didn't have an answer to that question. Even he didn't know the answer. The eldest branch of the Larson family. Yvette Larson and Finn Taylor were cooking in the kitchen together. It had always been the latter taking care of their meals, but for the past 3 days, the former had been in the kitchen helping out. Today, she had even helped to fry an egg. However, the egg had turned out completely charred. Nonetheless, Finn Taylor finished it. Witnessing this scene, Yvette Larson couldn't help but feel heartache for her husband. Even I probably wouldn't be able to swallow what I cooked. How could Finn Taylor finish it? Yvette, don't bother cooking. Just let him do it himself. You've made great contributions to our family. From now on, our family can lift our heads up high in the Larson family as the family head. Just then, Linda James walked over. Yes, you'd better take a seat there and get some rest. Finn Taylor giggled, advising his wife to rest as well. But she waved him off, saying that she wasn't tired. Even if nobody else knows, I know full well that I only managed to get here because of Finn. I must help him with household chores and do my duty as his wife. Why are you giggling? If not for you, we'd have made our comeback a long time ago. Yvette is so sensible to want to help you. Why are you so stupid? You should have stopped her. Our family has really been too kind to you. If you'd married into any other branch of the Larson family, you'd have been kicked out a long time ago. In Linda James's eyes, her son-in-law was nothing more than a piece of trash. To be honest, part of the reason he was famous for being a piece of trash was that Linda James had continuously complained about him outside the family. She felt annoyed after seeing Finn Taylor giggling and couldn't help but lecture him. However, her lashing out didn't evoke any gratitude from her daughter. On the contrary, Yvette Larson felt sorry for her husband. There had been many times Yvette Larson had nearly blurted out what her significant other had done for her. But what confused her was that he had never allowed her to do so. Mom, can you stop saying such things? We're a family, so why do you have to say such hurtful things? Left with no other choice, Yvette Larson could only speak up for her husband. But it seemed like it was never effective. This time was no different. What? I'm his mother-in-law. Can't I criticize him? Not only will I criticize him, but I'll even make more rules for him. Finn Taylor, Yvette is about to take over the Larson family's reins. Have you thought about how you're going to address us in the future? Yvette Larson really couldn't stand her mother's behavior. Mom, we're doing just fine. What do you want now? Shut up, Linda James continued. In the future, you'll address Yvette as, young lady, me as, ma'am, and Francis as, old master. Yvette Larson sneered and turned to her husband. Ignore her, let her say whatever she wants to. Linda James continued making a fuss for a long while, but everything she said was rebutted by her daughter. In the end, she hadn't gotten her way. Time flew by, and 3 days had passed. On this day, the entire Larson family was gathered at the old master's residence. They were all here to find out what was going to happen. Finn Taylor glanced at Quince Larson. The latter didn't look anywhere as devastated as he had expected of him. In fact, the latter looked rather pleased with himself. Finn Taylor was confused. What's he up to? Come in, all of you. The moment Joseph Larson spoke, the dozens of family members gathered outside the house strutted in. At that moment, the old master was seated at the head of the table, expressionless. Nobody could tell what the old master was thinking about from his expression. The old master took a look around before his gaze landed on Yvette Larson. Where's Finn Taylor? Everyone was bewildered by the old master's question. He has never given Finn Taylor any thought in the past. His presence has never mattered at family conferences in the past. Anyway, it didn't make a difference whether he was there or not since he can't make any decisions in the family. But this time, Grandpa brought up Finn Taylor on his own accord. What does that mean? Grandpa, he's outside, replied Yvette Larson before running out. Before long, she returned with her husband in tow. Finn Taylor, have a seat. Joseph Larson pointed at a seat next to him. This caused a slight hubbub amongst the Larson family. Everyone in the family knows that only the ones in the highest positions are allowed to sit next to Grandpa. But now, Grandpa has invited Finn Taylor to sit right next to him. What does that entail? Of course, even Finn Taylor himself didn't have an answer to that. Nonetheless, he obediently took his seat next to Joseph Larson. All right, now that you're seated, I'll ask you a question. Go ahead, Grandpa, I'm all ears. Okay, let me ask you. If you and Yvette have children in the future, what will their surname be? Just as expected, Quince Larson had already guessed that his grandpa would pose this question to the couple. But Finn Taylor remained silent, and he looked at Yvette Larson. She stood up. Grandpa, it's obvious that our children will be Taylors. Joseph Larson shook his head. No, Yvette, I won't blame you for not knowing the rules, but Finn Taylor, how could you be so ignorant as well? Rules? Finn Taylor replied. Yes, rules. You should be clear of your identity or just a matrilocal son-in-law. Your children should be Larsons. Finn Taylor sneered. Grandpa, the children will be my children and Yvette's. I think the two of us should have the final say on their surname. It seemed like Finn Taylor wasn't going to compromise on this matter. But strangely, Yvette Larson chose to stand on her husband's side too. "Grandpa, thank you for thinking about our marriage contract. However, I think you should leave the decision to us." Thud, Joseph Larson threw his teacup onto the ground. "What, do all of you want to rebel against me? I just said one simple thing, but you're asking me to shut up. I'm not even dead yet. Finn Taylor, I thought you looked quite honest and managed the house pretty well, but it seems like you're nowhere as sensible as I made you out to be. Why shouldn't a Larson have the surname, Larson? What other surname could they possibly have? You have no right to speak in the Larson family. I only gave you a chance to say it yourself because I respect you. But look at you, now you are so arrogant. Forget it then, I have nothing to say to you. Yvette Larson, don't you want to take control of the Larson family? If we can come to an agreement on giving your children the surname, Larson, this position is yours. But you can continue dreaming about having it if you want to give your children the surname, Taylor." Whoosh, in an instant, all eyes were focused on Yvette Larson alone. Everyone wondered what she would do. Linda James tried to use her gaze to hint to Yvette Larson to agree with her grandpa and to name her children Larsons. But Yvette Larson acted as though she hadn't seen it. Francis Larson sighed, not knowing what to say. The other Larson family members couldn't hold in their laughter. Is Yvette Larson stupid? All she needs to do is to say yes. As long as she says yes, the whole family and company will be hers. Yet, she's not answering. Quince Larson had already thought it through. I was prepared to look for that person, but from the way things are progressing, that seems unnecessary for now. Yvette Larson is much more foolish than I had expected. Grandpa, I can tell you right now that our children will definitely be Taylors. Yvette Larson knew deep in her heart that everything she had now was all thanks to her husband. She wasn't an ingrate. It was obvious that her children with Finn Taylor would be Taylors. She would never let anyone interfere in this matter. Silence. As Yvette Larson gave her reply, the entire room fell into silence, pin drop silence. Their grandpa, Joseph Larson, had the final say in the Larson family. This was something that had never changed in decades. But today, someone had gone against Grandpa. It was none other than Yvette Larson. The entire Larson family turned their eyes to Yvette Larson as though they wanted to skin her alive. "Yvette Larson, what do you mean? Are you not going to listen to Grandpa?" Quince Larson was sure of his victory this time. Maybe the heavens are on my side. Initially, he had been sure that he was going to lose in this battle over the position of family head. Who would have thought that Yvette would be so stupid? Isn't it just a surname? Why must she be so stubborn and make her children Taylors? Her children should be Larsons to begin with. Since he's a good-for-nothing matrilocal son-in-law, it's only right that their children are Larsons. Our Larson family will be made a joke if word of this gets out. That's right, Yvette, we know that you're used to getting your way, but how could you rebuke Grandpa? Eleanor Larson quickly added on as though she was trying to sentence her cousin to death. Francis Larson, look at how you've raised your daughter. It was Franklin Larson, Quince Larson's father, who had spoken. As a criminal in the Larson family's eyes, he rarely had the chance to speak during family meetings. But today, he spoke out. He was going to use this matter to drive the family's eldest branch into a corner so that they would never be able to make a comeback. "Brother, I'm not trying to say anything about you, but it's true that your family's gone overboard this time. Dad is Yvette's grandpa. Yvette is being very disrespectful and unfilial by going against his wishes. Dad is the Larson family head, and Yvette is just a younger member of the family. If anyone dared to disrespect me like that, I'd have kicked them out of the family." Eleanor Larson's father, Frederick Larson, cut in. His words were sharp. He painted a terrible picture of Yvette Larson the moment he opened his mouth. At this moment, the Larson family's eldest branch was facing criticism from all other members of the extended family. Even the arrogant Linda James didn't dare to utter a word. Her arrogance and pride were directed at Finn Taylor alone. When it came to others, she was no different from a coward. Instead, it was Francis Larson, who was usually shy and timid, who stood up. "Dad, brothers, the younger generation has their own ideas. In my opinion, it's best for us to leave that decision to the children's parents. Do you think we should always interfere in such matters? Does that mean that we should always listen to the family head? Let me ask you then. If Yvette agrees to Dad's order to make her children Larsons, she'll be the family head in the future. Will you both listen to her then? Also, Quince and Eleanor, don't get too happy now. I'll give you an example. If you guys have children in the future and Yvette asks you to name your children, Pig, or Dog, as the family head, will you agree to it? If you don't, you'd be disrespectful and unfilial, just like what your third uncle said earlier. Oh right, third brother, I remember saying that you'd kick such disrespectful and unfilial people out of the family, right? Yvette Larson's eyes reddened. Over the past few decades, everyone has told me that it was because of my father's averageness that Grandpa passed over him to choose his successor from the third generation. I've spoken to Father about it too, and even I had felt that he was slightly dull. But today, I finally realized that Father isn't dull at all. He simply didn't want to fight over the position anymore. Given his education and abilities, some things no longer matter to him. It's definitely not because he isn't capable. His short speech had rendered the entire Larson family speechless today. Francis Larson, what are you saying? Of course, the Larson family was unreceptive to his words. What, you don't like what I'm saying? Then, what makes you think I like what you guys are saying? Frederick and Franklin, I'm sure you guys don't need me to remind you about the things you've done. How could you have the cheek to talk about others? Although Francis Larson hadn't explicitly stated it, everyone knew exactly what he was talking about, their relationship with Hilary Stone 18 years ago. Oh, what are you trying to say? I want to know about it too. Just then, a woman's voice sounded from outside the room. In an instant, the entire Larson family froze. Dozens of eyes stared at the door. While everyone had different thoughts in their mind upon hearing this voice, they each wondered what the other was thinking. The door was gently pushed open. Along with the sun rays that shone in came a woman dressed in an elegant dress. It was none other than Hilary Stone. The moment Hilary Stone appeared, Joseph Larson seemed to slump to one side. But very quickly, he composed himself. He then pointed at Hilary Stone and yelled, "Who allowed you in? Dad, look at what you're saying. It's a crucial moment where you're announcing the Larson family's successor. As the Larson family's daughter-in-law, it's only right that I'm here." Naturally, Hilary Stone knew exactly why Joseph Larson was lashing out at her. However, she simply pretended not to know and even threw a question back at the old master. The reason why she was so bold was that she knew Joseph Larson inside out. This old man cares too much about his reputation. He'll never spread news that will damage the family's reputation. It was because she understood this about the old man that she dared to be so bold. "Well, Dad, can I sit down?" It wasn't much of a question anyway, since she casually took a seat beside her son. She handed Quinn Larson a stack of papers. "I heard that Yvette managed to score the Larson family quite a lot of business, so much that our family will become the second most prominent family in San Francisco." "Good. It's good that these young people are motivated. I have a contract here too. Perhaps you'll consider making Quinn your successor instead after looking at it, Dad." Hilary Stone patted her son on the back. The latter then walked up to hand his grandpa the contract. All eyes were glued on the contract in Quinn Larson's hands. What kind of contract is that? Why is Hilary Stone so confident? Even Yvette Larson desperately wanted to know what was written on the contract. For some reason, she had a feeling that Hilary Stone was going to turn the tables today. Seeing the expression on Yvette Larson's face, her husband reached out for her hand. He was comforting her and trying to tell her not to panic. In reality, Finn Taylor wasn't flustered at all. He had already made preparations. "Hilary Stone thinks too highly of herself if she thinks she'll be able to turn the tables against us." Joseph Larson took that contract and flipped it open slowly. He started reading it meticulously, not missing even a word. The further into the document he read, the more shocked he got. Everyone in the room saw the old master's expression. "What's on that contract?" And that was how time ticked by until 10 minutes passed. Joseph Larson took a deep breath. "Okay," that was all he said. "Grandpa, what's on that contract?" Quince Larson couldn't hold himself back and burst out. "The contract states that the Larson family will collaborate with the Sanders family. From now on, our family will be on equal footing with the Sanders family and benefit from San Francisco's business industry together." Hiss. They had already guessed that the contract meant a lot the moment Joseph Larson said, "Okay," but they had never expected this. Yvette Larson's contracts would only make the Larson family second to the Sanders family at the very most. But with Hilary Stone's contract, they would be on equal grounds with the Sanders family. If anyone else had presented this contract, everyone would have wondered if it was fake. But because it had come from Hilary Stone, nobody suspected anything. She's Hilary Stone. She's definitely capable of doing that. But would Grandpa accept Hilary Stone's contract? After all, this contract is a bit disgraceful. If we accept it, other families in San Francisco will definitely frown upon us. Besides, Hilary Stone's demand in return for the contract is for Quinn Larson to inherit the family. That's a taboo in the Larson family. If we were to do so, all prominent families in San Francisco would definitely turn their eyes to Quinn Larson. Then, it's just a matter of time before the question about his father comes up. Joseph Larson was deep in thought. Nobody dared to speak up. Nobody dared to cut in at such a critical moment. Dad, Yvette and Eleanor are girls, and it isn't realistic for their children to be Larsons. It won't be right. As for the boys, there are only Quince and Quinn. Quince may be your eldest grandson, but he's done such shameful things that have damaged our family's reputation. He's brought a lot of trouble upon us. My son Quinn is young, intelligent, and well-educated. Why shouldn't he be given the position of family head? In Hillary Stone's eyes, the entire Larson family were pieces of trash. Only her son was a talent. In the face of such criticism, even the initially raging second and third branches were left speechless. Franklin Larson and Frederick Larson only dared to fight with the family's eldest branch. Neither of them dared to make a peep against this woman. Yvette Larson wanted to say something but eventually held herself back. She wasn't in any place to speak about these rumors. Of course, Hillary Stone had to have something else up her sleeves if she dared to be so bold. Because Joseph Larson hadn't spoken, nobody dared to say a thing either. Hillary Stone had already known that this would happen. Unfortunately, her calculations hadn't accounted for someone Finn Taylor. She should have never attacked Yvette Larson. She was Finn Taylor's soft spot. Once Master Peregrine flared up, millions would die. Finn Taylor walked up to Hillary Stone and reached out, directly grabbing her neck. Exerting some force, he slowly lifted her up from the ground. Hillary Stone was in great distress. She felt as though she was going to suffocate. She struggled to break free. Unfortunately, that didn't do anything. She struggled for a good 3 minutes until her whole face was flushed. She was on the verge of death. Finn Taylor then shoved her to the ground. As Hillary Stone lay on the ground, she panted heavily, trying to catch her breath. It took a long while before she finally regained her senses, and she glared at Finn Taylor fiercely. "What are you doing?" Hillary Stone went crazy. She had almost lost it earlier. Finn Taylor had clearly been trying to kill me. You know best what I'm trying to do. Hillary Stone was slightly guilty and didn't dare to ask any further. Her guess was that the other had found out about her attacking his wife, but she wasn't clear about how Finn Taylor had found out about it. However, the latter didn't care about Hillary Stone and simply turned to the old master. "Grandpa, I'm only addressing you as Grandpa because I respect you. I hope that your actions are worthy of respect." Finn Taylor has never rebuked anyone, nor has he ever fought back when being beaten up. Who would have imagined that he would talk back to Grandpa today? Everyone from the Larson family is here. It's a major matter to choose a successor. Grandpa, you'd better think it through. I have something for you. With that, Finn Taylor took out a stack of papers and put them in Joseph Larson's hand. He then picked up his wife's hand. "Grandpa, it'll be our last time here. The next time we're here, I hope that Yvette will be the Larson family head. Otherwise, we won't so much as step in the Larson family's residence." With that, Finn Taylor dragged his spouse out of the house. Everything had happened so suddenly, but Finn Taylor wasn't Hillary Stone after all. Immediately, Frederick Larson and Franklin Larson became elders once again. "Brother, I don't even know what to say. Is this how you raise your children? It's a father's duty to raise his child well. It's fine that Finn Taylor is insensible, but how could Yvette leave too? Who did she learn such bad habits from?" Frederick Larson and Franklin Larson went on. But by now, Joseph Larson had already flipped the stack of photos around to look at them. They were all of Quinn Larson, and each revealed an unspeakable sight. Just moments earlier, he had truly considered handing the family down to Quinn Larson. But that thought immediately dissipated the moment he looked at these photos. It's indeed a father's duty to educate his children. This is absolutely true. Unfortunately, that shouldn't have been directed at Yvette but Quinn. Like mother, like son. He's the true disgrace in the family. If I were to put someone like this in charge of the family, the Larson family would be ruined. The meeting was still ongoing, but Finn Taylor had left with his wife. "Aren't we going to stay until the end?" Yvette Larson was still a little dazed. She wanted to know who her grandpa would hand the family over to. No need. There won't be a result today. In actual fact, Finn Taylor was right. With Yvette Larson's stubbornness, Joseph Larson didn't want to hand the family over to her. As for Quinn Larson, it was certain that he wouldn't inherit the position given his scandal. As for Quince Larson and Eleanor Larson, it was true that they were both capable. But to a greater extent, they were simply street smart. Someone like them might be able to help the family prosper in the short term, but the family was sure to go down with them in the long run. Of course, Joseph Larson didn't wish for that to happen. As such, the old master simply waved his hands and chased everyone out, saying that he was tired. And that was how the first battle over the position of Larson family head ended with no result. Ellipsis. Where are we going? Yvette Larson was confused. She displayed none of that dominance she did in the office. On the contrary, she felt comforted and supported now that her significant other, who had always been known as a piece of trash, had backed her up. She even asked her husband what they were going to do now. Yvette Larson never would have expected such a situation in the past. To the Landon family's house. The Landon family. Yvette Larson was stunned. She, of course, knew that Finn Taylor was talking about Clarine Landon. What, are you in a hurry to save her because she likes you? Joked Yvette Larson. Let's not go then, he replied immediately. PFF'd. Yvette Larson chuckled. Do you know that Clarine told me some time back that she also realized that you'd changed? It seems like you're quite charming now. She even asked me if I was afraid that I'd lose you. Finn Taylor turned back to look at his wife. He was intrigued. I told her that I'm not afraid of losing you. Why? He asked. She asked me the same question too. I told her that you would have had a change of heart a long time ago. Over the past 3 years, I've made you suffer, and you've been scolded and humiliated countless times for my sake. You've given up too much for me, so I know that you'll never have a change of heart. Finn Taylor smiled and picked up his wife's hand before heading toward the car. Get in, let's go to the Landon family's house. Very quickly, they arrived at their destination. The Landon family was a second-tier family in San Francisco. But unlike the Larson family, they had only one family branch. The whole Landon family was made up of only 3 people: Kenneth Landon, Clarine Landon, and Cassandra Campbell. As such, it was much easier for them to make decisions as compared to the Larson family. Finn Taylor didn't bother pressing on the doorbell. He knew that he would likely be refused entry if he were to do so. He simply walked right into the Landon family's residence with his spouse in tow. You can choose not to welcome me. Anyway, I never hoped that you'd be welcoming either. As the couple walked into the Landon family's hall, Kenneth Landon and Cassandra Campbell were seated on the sofa, discussing matters. Then, their eyes met. Why are you here? It was bold of Cassandra Campbell to say such a thing. After all, the Landon family and Larson family had been friends for a long time, and Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon were bosom friends. Now that Yvette Larson was here, she had put up an unwelcoming front. We're here to bring Clarine with us. Finn Taylor spoke up before his wife even had the chance to do so. Who are you to say anything here? Of course, Finn Taylor was a nobody to Cassandra Campbell. To put it bluntly, a piece of trash like this martialarts son-in-law was simply dirtying their floor. If not for the fact that the two families are still acquaintances, I probably would have broken in to save Clarine by now. All right now, Clarine is our daughter, she has nothing to do with you two. You guys can leave. Cassandra Campbell gave her order and requested for Finn Taylor to leave. But of course, they weren't going to do so. We're not going to leave until we see Clarine today. Finn Taylor ignored Cassandra Campbell and walked in with his wife. Just as the couple reached the door, Kenneth Landon finally spoke up. Stop right there. Finn Taylor, what do you make of my Landon family? Do you think you can just come and go as you please? I'll raise and educate my daughter myself. I don't need anyone from the Larson family to interfere in this. The moment Kenneth Landon finished his words, 8 men surrounded Finn Taylor. The 8 muscular men in black were the Landon family's main bodyguards. Each was a former martial arts champion. Kenneth Landon had faced assassinations and all kinds of dangers in the past. It had been the protection from these 8 people that he had survived them all. Go. With Kenneth Landon's order, the 8 men charged forward. They were terribly skillful and agile. Kenneth Landon let out a satisfied smile. He believed that Finn Taylor and his wife wouldn't be able to do anything as long as these 8 bodyguards were around. But his smile gradually stiffened. Each of his 8 bodyguards was a martial arts champion who had fought against hundreds of men, yet they fell one after another. Within 10 minutes, not a single one of the 8 was left standing. Kenneth Landon's expression was interesting, to say the least. Can we go see Clarine now? Asked Finn Taylor. But without even waiting for Kenneth Landon's reply, he headed upstairs with his wife. When the couple arrived at Clarine Landon's room, they realized that the door was locked shut with a huge padlock. Finn Taylor yanked the padlock off the door. Don't come in. If you come in, I'll. The moment the couple entered the room, they were greeted by the sight of Clarine Landon standing on the window ledge, about to jump down. Clarine, it's me. Yvette Larson was scared stiff and quickly yelled out. Clarine Landon was stunned. She turned back and realized that it wasn't her parents but Yvette Larson and her husband. However, This move caused her to lose her balance, and she fell out of the window. Ah, Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon yelled out at the same time. Both of them were shell-shocked. Just then, Cassandra Campbell and Kenneth Landon had rushed in too. That was how they both witnessed their precious daughter about to fall out of the window. At that moment, terror could be seen on their faces. It was terror from deep within their souls that couldn't be faked. But at that critical moment, Finn Taylor ran over to the window and grabbed his wife's best friend. Phew, Clarine Landon let out a deep breath. If not for Finn Taylor, I might have gotten into a serious incident this time. Clarine Landon climbed back into the room, and her best friend rushed into the room. The two then embraced each other. As for Finn Taylor, his ice-cold gaze was fixed on the former's parents. For some reason, both Kenneth Landon and Cassandra Campbell instinctively took a step back under Finn Taylor's cold gaze. Neither of them knew why they were reacting in this way. This is our house. Our daughter was the one who nearly got into an accident, and Finn Taylor is nothing but a useless matrilocal son-in-law. Why are we even scared of him? Let's go, Clarine. I'll bring you out of this jail, said Yvette Larson as she tried to lead her best friend out. But Cassandra Campbell suddenly seemed to think of something, and she stepped in front of Yvette Larson. Yvette, you'd better worry about your own family. There's no need for you to worry about Clarine. Yvette Larson looked at Cassandra Campbell in disbelief. The latter seemed like an unfamiliar stranger at this moment. Auntie Cassandra, we've known each other for years, and I've always respected you. I hope you consider this clearly. Is the Sanders family or your daughter more important to you? If not for us, your daughter could very well be dead by now. Cassandra Campbell knew that her daughter's best friend was telling the truth, but she refused to acknowledge it. So as she reached out, she said, I don't understand what you're saying. The Landon family has nothing to do with you. I don't need a Larson worrying about who I want to get into an alliance with. She grabbed hold of her daughter with no intention of letting her go. Yvette Larson was so furious that she was on the verge of tears. Clarine Landon is my best friend. I never expected my best friend to be driven to the point of suicide, and the one who had driven her to this point is her mother. Fine, how about this? We'll let Clarine answer this question herself. She's all grown up, and you can't restrict her freedom. You can't stop her from leaving. Yvette Larson compromised but also proposed a solution, one that Cassandra Campbell couldn't accept. No, how can I wash my hands off of my daughter's affairs? Cassandra Campbell naturally refused to allow her daughter to make her own choice because she was clear about what the latter would choose. She knew perfectly well that this situation was a result of her restricting her daughter's freedom. Auntie Cassandra, don't you think you're going overboard? Yvette Larson was infuriated. Although her mom did control her often, she still had a say in the family at the very least. Sometimes, her mom would even stop scolding Finn Taylor once she stepped in to speak up for him. She had never thought that her best friend led such a life at home. I'm going overboard. How am I going overboard? By trying to educate my daughter? But you trespassed into my house without my permission, and you're even screaming at me. Don't you think that you're the one going overboard? Cassandra Campbell rebutted as though she was a crazy woman. Yvette Larson wanted to say more, but her husband tugged on her, gesturing for her not to say anything more. He then stood forward. I'm not going to address you as Auntie Cassandra anymore since you won't acknowledge me. I'll speak with Uncle Kenneth then. Uncle Kenneth, don't blame me for fighting my way out of here with Clarine if you aren't reasonable. Finn Taylor didn't want to reason it out with the Landons. That was reserved for reasonable people. When faced with such unreasonable people, Finn Taylor simply chose the easiest and roughest method. Finn Taylor. Kenneth Landon was fuming, and his blood was boiling. But at the same time, he was panicking. This was because he had seen the other skills. He believed that Finn Taylor would be able to fight his way out. Fine, I'll let you leave with my daughter. But you have to promise me that she'll be safe, especially from the Sanders family. Kenneth Landon finally relented. But this almost meant one thing: the Landon family and Sanders family were on the verge of breaking up. Due to this, the Sanders family would definitely do something against Clarine Landon. As such, he wanted Finn Taylor to promise him that he would keep his daughter safe. All right, I promise you. Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon looked on dazedly. Yvette Larson had tried negotiating a deal for such a long time, yet Finn Taylor had settled it in no time at all. What was Kenneth Landon really afraid of? What did you say, Kenneth Landon? Cassandra Campbell heard that her husband had actually agreed to that request, so she quickly stepped up to cut in. Shut up. However, Cassandra Campbell had never thought that her husband would lash out at her. Yvette, your auntie is a little blunt with her words, but you must know that she's doing this for Clarine's good. You both have a point, and neither of you is wrong. I apologize on her behalf. You and Clarine can leave. I still have some things to tell Finn Taylor. Is that okay? To be honest, it was Yvette Larson's first time seeing Kenneth Landon speaking with such an attitude. And the person it was directed toward was none other than herself. Oh, of course. Yvette Larson then left with her best friend, afraid that they would change their minds. How could you let our daughter go? Cassandra Campbell was confused. What's he trying to do? Get us 2 cups of tea and bring them to the study. Kenneth Landon didn't answer his wife's question and instead instructed her to do something else. Finn Taylor, let's go have a chat in the study. Cassandra Campbell couldn't believe her eyes. Not only did he allow our daughter to leave, but he's even being so polite to a useless matrilocal son-in-law. He must have woken up on the wrong side of the bed. But her feelings were just feelings. She dared not go against her husband's wishes. Kenneth Landon invited Finn Taylor into the study. Finn Taylor had been unwelcome just minutes earlier and had even needed to fight his way upstairs. But now, a prominent figure in San Francisco, Kenneth Landon was being respectful to him. Finn Taylor didn't try to refuse and headed to the study with his hands behind his back. As for Kenneth Landon, he followed behind Finn Taylor like a disciple. If anyone learned of this, they would probably be dumbfounded. The moment they sat down in the study, Kenneth Landon got right to the point. Finn Taylor, you're well trained. Have you been trained by a famous master? You wouldn't believe me even if I denied it, so I might as well admit to it. I'm second to none in San Francisco. Second to none in San Francisco. What bold words. Although Kenneth Landon was rather doubtful of that, he didn't rebuke him. All right, I'll pour my heart out to you today. When the Sanders family came to find me, my wife wanted the Landon family to become the Sanders family's vassal again. However, how can one live like that? Finn Taylor, do you want to make a deal with me? Just then, someone pushed the room to the study open. Kenneth Landon was taken aback, but he relaxed upon seeing that it was his wife entering the room. She had made tea and was now bringing it over for her husband. She had never thought that she would scare him. Kenneth Landon had just gotten to the most crucial part, wanted to rope Finn Taylor in to defeat the Sanders family. In the end, the door was suddenly pushed open just as he was about to expose this top secret. It would be stranger if he weren't scared. What's wrong? Cassandra Campbell thought that it was strange that her husband was sweating as she entered. Huh, what's with you? Nothing. Go out. Cassandra Campbell continued staring at her husband suspiciously after placing the teacups down. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't see anything wrong. Thus, she left the room. Let's continue. Kenneth Landon placed one of the teacups in front of Finn Taylor. Then, he picked his own cup up and blew on the tea. This piece of pie that is the Sanders family is huge. I'd be lying if I said that I don't want a bite of it, but I know very well that my teeth aren't strong enough to handle it. That's why I came up with this plan to find someone to help me bite a chunk of that pie off. That person will naturally take their own share of the pie then. What's left might not be appetizing to them, and they won't eat it. But what's left will definitely be good enough for me. Finn Taylor sipped on his tea while listening to Kenneth Landon's proposal. From time to time, he nodded, but that wasn't because he agreed with whatever the other was saying. Rather, he was merely signaling that he was listening to the other. I approached the Kennedy family of Washington, and they're willing to share a piece of that pie with me. Although Finn Taylor appeared surprised by the mention of that family, he wasn't shaken in the slightest bit in reality. What Kenneth Landon didn't know was that Finn Taylor had arranged for the chance encounter between him and Zachary Kennedy. Finn Taylor had already exerted his influence on this city a long time ago with his power. What do you need me to do? Asked Finn Taylor all of a sudden. Protect my family. Kenneth Landon continued, the Sanders family is really petty and will definitely take revenge on us if we do anything to them. I'm afraid that they'll harm Clarine or Cassandra. I'm begging you, please protect them. Finn Taylor breathed out and took a sip of his tea. You don't have to worry about Clarine's safety. As for Cassandra Campbell, his gaze was cold. I need an apology. Apology. Kenneth Landon understood why. In addition to the incident earlier, Cassandra Campbell had also humiliated Finn Taylor at his daughter's party. But now, he was asking Finn Taylor to protect his wife. It would indeed be quite ridiculous to expect Finn Taylor to help Cassandra Campbell before she apologized. Kenneth Landon pushed the door open. Cassandra, come over for a second. She walked over. What's the matter? Cassandra, you've been treating Finn Taylor very rudely. You owe him an apology. Cassandra Campbell couldn't help but feel that her ears were playing tricks on her. How can this be? How could Kenneth Landon make me apologize to Finn Taylor? Who is he? He's nothing but a good-for-nothing matrilocal son-in-law joke in San Francisco. What will become of me after I apologize to him? Kenneth, have you gone mad? Kenneth Landon didn't know how to explain himself to his wife. The fight against the Sanders family was too risky. Naturally, it would be best for as few people to know of this as possible. As such, Kenneth Landon wasn't prepared to let his spouse in on this secret. Yet, it didn't seem likely that he would be able to convince her to apologize to Finn Taylor without telling her about it. Cassandra, I'm not joking around. You'd better apologize to Finn Taylor right away. The Larson family has always been friends with us, and Yvette has always been best friends with our daughter. You really were too rude to him. Kenneth Landon tried to convince his wife with such words. Obviously, they weren't effective the slightest bit. Kenneth, I think you've really gone mad. How could you ask me to apologize to a piece of trash? You might as well kill me. I'm not going to be humiliated like that. Cassandra Campbell huffed arrogantly. I'm never going to accede to that request. It seems like there's no point in me staying then. With that, Finn Taylor stood up to leave. Of course, Kenneth Landon wouldn't let him leave just like that. He landed a slap directly on his spouse's face. Bitch. Do my words mean nothing to you now? Apologize right now. Cassandra Campbell rarely saw her husband flare up. Moreover, this was the first time he had ever hit her. I don't understand. Isn't he just a useless matrilocal son-in-law? Why does Kenneth Landon care so much about his feelings? But Cassandra Campbell was terrified. She was truly frantic. Finally, she chose to compromise. Finn Taylor, I'll apologize to you. I'm sorry. Cassandra Campbell's previous words about her rather being killed than apologizing still rang in their ears. But in the next second, she apologized. However, Finn Taylor didn't seem to have any intention of letting her off. Kenneth Landon, I think you're mistaken. I meant apologizing to Yvette Larson. Don't you think that Cassandra Campbell went overboard with her words to my wife? Kenneth Landon was stunned. He had never thought that Finn Taylor wasn't requesting an apology for himself. But thinking about it, it makes sense. Finn Taylor always puts his wife first in any event. It seems like I really misunderstood him. Cassandra, let's go look for Yvette. Are you kidding, Kenneth? Do you want me to apologize to Yvette too? Cassandra Campbell felt as though she was getting humiliated. Is apologizing once not enough? How can he make me apologize a second time? Does that mean I'll have to apologize to 100 other people as long as Finn Taylor wants me to? I'm not going. No matter what he said this time, Cassandra Campbell wasn't going to budge. Finn Taylor sneered and walked out of the house. Seeing that he was leaving, Kenneth Landon panicked. Whether the Landon family will be able to turn the tables and conquer all the large corporations in San Francisco depends on this alone. There's no way I'm going to let such a big fish escape just like that. Cassandra Campbell, if you don't go out now, I'll get a divorce. A divorce? Kenneth has never even mentioned that once in our decades of marriage, but he spoke about it today. Just because of that piece of trash, Kenneth mentioned a divorce to me. Cassandra Campbell was utterly disappointed, and she gritted her teeth while saying, fine. Let's get a divorce. Finn Taylor had no interest in the fight between Kenneth Landon and Cassandra Campbell. This fight in San Francisco is getting more interesting. The Landon family, the Larson family, and the Sanders family are all involved in it now. This seemingly messy situation was all under Finn Taylor's control. Similarly, he held the final say over all of their lives. Finn Taylor strolled out and headed home. Ellipsis. The next day, Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson managed to find somewhere for Clarine Landon to stay. As the three of them arrived at her new residence, Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon received a message at the very same time. They glanced at each other. What's wrong? Finn Taylor saw that something was amiss. PFF'd. Ha ha ha. Just then, the best friends burst out into laughter. What's wrong? We have a friend named Gavin Kleina. He's inviting us for a housewarming party now that he's gotten a new house. Someone you haven't been in contact with. Yes, that's exactly the case. The classmates who contact you after a long time either treat you to a meal or want to borrow money from you. Finn Taylor couldn't help but sneer. There's no need to keep too many close friends, you only need a few good friends. Anyway, everyone else will eventually leave you. Most of them only treat you to a meal when they get a house, get married, or have children just to get a huge sum of money in return. Reply to him and tell him that you'll be there on time. Huh, Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon were both stunned. They hadn't expected Finn Taylor to give such a suggestion. Are we really going? Why shouldn't we go when they're inviting us? Seeing how insistent Finn Taylor was, the two best friends didn't refuse. As such, they both replied to Gavin Kleina, saying that they would be there right on time. Clarine Landon suddenly stepped in front of Finn Taylor. "Let me tell you a secret. Gavin Kleine used to pursue Yvette when we were still in school." Finn Taylor remained indifferent. He wasn't surprised at all because he had already known about this. When he had first entered the Larson family, he had already conducted a thorough investigation on his wife. At that time, he simply thought that this was a marriage of convenience. He hadn't expected himself to be smiling after the investigation. He was deeply attracted to this strong, independent, and beautiful girl. Finn Taylor had no idea what Gavin Kleine's intention for sending this invitation was. "Well, I don't mind attending this party just to receive your declaration of war personally." "Then, you'd better know to retreat yourself and not be too delusional." Gavin Kleine's housewarming party was set for 7 days later. The location was none other than Gavin Kleine's newly purchased house at Bayview. Because this place was well connected, property prices there were on the high side. The only properties that were more expensive were those in the downtown region and the villas at Pacific Heights. Finn Taylor, Yvette Larson, and Clarine Landon headed to Bayview together. Ellipsis. The Bayview neighborhood. At that moment, Gavin Kleine's house was filled with guests. Gavin Kleine glanced at the clock, then at the gate. Some people witnessed that scene, and they couldn't help but mock him. "Gavin, are you looking for Yvette?" PFF'd. The moment that person said those words, the whole house erupted into laughter. "Gavin Kleine, oh Gavin Kleine. You value hoes more than bros. So many of your classmates are here, yet you don't even care about us. But look at how panicked you are just because Yvette isn't here yet. There's no point being so frantic anyway. She's already married, so you don't even stand a chance." As the topic of Yvette Larson's marriage came up, everyone seemed to be interested in the conversation and had gathered around. "What's the name of her husband?" "Finn Taylor." "Oh right, Finn Taylor. What husband? He's just a useless matrilocal son-in-law." At the mention of Finn Taylor's status as a matrilocal son-in-law, all the guests seemed to become livelier. "I heard that Finn Taylor hasn't even touched Yvette Larson once in the past 3 years. Is that true?" "Who knows, but what we do know is that Yvette Larson hasn't gotten pregnant even after 3 years." Ha ha ha. Thinking about how Finn Taylor hadn't even managed to touch his wife after 3 years, they couldn't hold their laughter in. But just then, 3 people walked into the house. As everyone else took a closer look at the 3 new visitors, everyone recognized 2 of the 3, Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon. "Yvette, Clarine," Gavin Kleine walked up and asked hesitantly. Yvette Larson and Clarine Landon presented him with a gift. "That's right, it's us." Yvette Larson glanced around. "There are quite a few of my old classmates in attendance." Gavin Kleine received the gift before pointing at Finn Taylor. "Who's this?" "My husband, Finn Taylor." The moment Yvette Larson said this, the atmosphere in the room froze. "We had just been talking about Finn Taylor, and now, he's right in front of us." Many of them stared at the new visitors, trying to see for themselves just how this famous matrilocal son-in-law of San Francisco looked like. Finn Taylor was no stranger to such stares. In the past 3 years, he had been the object of many such curious stares. Everyone was simply curious about that rumored useless matrilocal son-in-law. "It doesn't bother me, look as much as you want." Finn Taylor had gotten used to this after 3 years of training. "What are you all staring at? It's Gavin Kleine's housewarming party today, he should be the star. Why are you all staring at my husband? He's not a beautiful celebrity." While Finn Taylor wasn't bothered by such stares, his wife was. She knew exactly how talented her husband was. Although she didn't understand why her husband had chosen to hide his true abilities, she knew that he had his own reasons. But as long as she was around, she wouldn't allow anyone to bully him. Right, I'm the star today, let's go take a look around my house." Gavin Kleine then brought everyone on a tour around his house. "Yvette, look at this chandelier. What do you think about it? I had it flown over from France. It cost me $30,000. Hiss. In an instant, everyone drew a breath in. 30,000, Gavin, you're so rich. Rich, not really, I earn only a few $100,000 a year. Gavin Kleine spoke haughtily and was up in the clouds. He was clearly bragging. A few $100,000, Gavin, where do you work? Have you heard of the Sullivan Corporation? The Sullivan family of New York? Yes, that's their company. I was initially working in New York, but I was transferred here after they opened a branch office here. I'm probably third in command in the Sullivan Corporation now. A few $100,000 a month doesn't mean much. I just returned to San Francisco and didn't have a place for myself, so I just bought a house to make do for now. Once I have the time, I'll go to Pacific Heights to take a look around." Upon hearing that Gavin Kleine was going to buy a house at Pacific Heights, everyone became even more excited. Everyone from San Francisco knew what that meant. Pacific Heights was the core of San Francisco's business circle. Even among the prominent families in San Francisco, there were top-tier families and second-tier families. Yvette Larson's family was a second-tier family. Why weren't they a top-tier family? Because they didn't have a villa at Pacific Heights. This was the rule the Sanders family had set. Although it seemed tyrannical, it had been passed down up until today. The key determining factor of whether a person was successful or not was whether they were capable of purchasing a villa at Pacific Heights. Of course, Gavin Kleine was simply exaggerating. The cheapest villa at Pacific Heights cost at least $15 million. There was no way he'd be able to afford one there, given his financial ability. But of course, nobody present knew just how much he had. That was why nobody was able to expose his lies. Yvette, make sure to come once I buy a villa at Pacific Heights. Finn Taylor was speechless. Why don't you buy a house first? What's the point of talking so much crap here? Sigh, it's really such a pity. Didn't I chase Yvette in the past? Countless voices sounded out one after another. Yes, you did. Yes, what a pity. I was incapable at that time, but now that I'm capable, you're already married. It'd be great if you were the female owner of this house. Yvette Larson cut in. All right, stop it, I don't like you, and I have a great relationship with my husband. I'm going to leave if you continue saying such things. Forget it, I won't joke around anymore. Gavin Kleine raised both his arms up exaggeratedly. You must be Yvette's husband. Brother, I heard that you don't have a good reputation in San Francisco. Is that true? But that doesn't matter. It's enough as long as you can give Yvette a blissful life. Oh right, brother, where's the house that you bought? Since we're all here, you can give us your address. We can decide on a date now so that we can have a meal together. Gavin Kleine seemed to be trying to provoke him. Finn Taylor had never worked a single day in the past 3 years. The whole of San Francisco knew about this. Nonetheless, Gavin Kleine had chosen to say such things to him. Yvette Larson was fuming, and she picked up her husband's hand, preparing to leave. She was never one to joke around. Since you made a promise and couldn't stick to it, I'll leave. But her husband didn't budge no matter how hard she tugged on him. Yvette Larson bit on her lip. Why is he still staying? Yvette, since your classmates are all here, let's just announce it. Yvette Larson was slightly confused. What is Finn Taylor trying to do? Our family has worked hard over the past 3 years, and we've bought a house too. However, it's just a second-hand property. It's currently under renovation, and the works should be done by the 5th of next month. I discussed with Yvette, and we were planning on inviting some friends and family over on the 10th to have a party. Initially, I thought that it'd be too shameless to send you guys invitations and receive gifts from you since you haven't met in such a long time. But since someone has already brought it up, I might as well invite you guys too. Make sure you mark your calendars for the 10th of next month. Gavin Kleine had wanted to use this to put Finn Taylor down so that he would stand out. Besides, he had heard about Yvette Larson's collaboration with the Xander Corporation. If he could interact with Yvette through work, he might just be able to win her over. However, not only had he not been able to make Finn Taylor look bad, but he had even been put in his place by the latter. More importantly, it seemed like he was the one scolding himself. He couldn't even rebuke the other. But given Gavin Kleine's understanding of Yvette Larson's family, he refused to believe that Finn Taylor was telling the truth. Buying a house. Can your family buy a house given your family's conditions? Oh right, you said it was second-hand property. Don't tell me it's in a run-down neighborhood, the kind that has dozens of floors but no elevators. Gavin Kleine felt that he was right. If that's the case, I would be terribly interested in attending Yvette Larson's housewarming party. Then, I'll let everyone know how stupid she was for rejecting me. Yvette, your family bought a house too. Where is it? How is it compared to Gavin's house? Property in San Francisco had sky-high prices. There weren't many young people who could afford their own properties now. Now that everyone heard that Yvette Larson's family had bought a house too, they posed this question excitedly. However, Yvette Larson was simply confused. Why don't I know about my family buying a house? Finn Taylor is just making this up to shut Gavin Kleine up. How am I supposed to say anything? Don't ask any more questions. Just come and have a look at it on the 10th. You'll find out then. Finn Taylor stepped in and saved his wife from the tricky situation. But Gavin Kleine had seen Yvette Larson's expression and Finn Taylor's hasty explanation. He didn't believe that Finn Taylor was speaking the truth. But there's no hurry to expose them now. There's no point in doing so. He hoped to make the matter as big of a fuss as possible. He wanted to see just how Finn Taylor would clean this mess up once his lies were exposed. Although this man doesn't have a good reputation in San Francisco, he's still Yvette Larson's husband. What I want is for the other to be entirely ruined. I can then use the chance to force Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson to get a divorce. That way, I won't even need to go against my conscience to be with her. As everyone finished their meal at Gavin Klein's house, they left his house one after another. The moment the trio got into the car, Clarine Landon hurriedly asked her best friend, "Yvette, you bought a house. Why didn't I hear about it?" "What do you mean?" He was just bragging. "Finn, how are you going to clean up this mess now?" Finn Taylor let out a proud smile. "What if I was telling the truth?" "Keep on bragging. Do you know how much a house costs? I think you'd have money to buy me breakfast, but I've never expected you to buy a house." All Finn Taylor got was $200 a month, and he had to feed a family of 4 with that. Yvette Larson even suspected that her husband had to pay for their expenses out of his own pocket. "Who'll believe you when you say that you've earned enough money to buy a house?" But even though Finn Taylor was the one who had lied, the couple would have to bear the consequences together. As such, Yvette Larson was at a loss. After all, there was no way she could remain in San Francisco once word of her lies got out. After sending Clarine Landon to her residence, the couple returned home. Even after arriving home, Yvette Larson couldn't put her mind to rest. As such, she called her husband up to her room. "Finn, how are you going to solve this problem? We've told so many people about the house. Won't it be embarrassing for me if our lies are exposed?" Finn Taylor couldn't help but chuckle upon seeing her worry-filled face. "Silly, don't worry about this. I've already bought the house, and it's undergoing renovations now. We'll be able to move out and enjoy time together with just the 2 of us." Finn Taylor had already instructed Wampus to settle anything regarding the house for him. The house that he had purchased was none other than the first villa at Pacific Heights. It was also the most expensive and luxurious house in all of San Francisco. Since Finn Taylor had already made a promise to his wife, he wasn't going to go back on his word. "What, you guys bought a house?" Someone pushed the door open just then, and Linda James rushed in. She had initially come to call Finn Taylor downstairs to start cooking. Who would have expected that she would overhear such a huge secret? "Yvette, where did you get the money to buy a house? Did you embezzle money from the company again?" Linda James had already had the suspicion that her daughter had embezzled money from the company to buy her car. After all, Yvette Larson was the Larson Corporation's deputy CEO. She would leave a better impression on others if she were to drive a better car to business meetings. That was why she felt that the old master would turn a blind eye to it. But Linda James hadn't expected her daughter to embezzle even more money in such a short period of time. Moreover, this was to buy a house. That isn't a small sum at all. If the old master finds out about that, he might very well kill our entire family. Yvette Larson didn't know what to say. "I just found out about the house. If I were to say that Finn paid for the house, my mother would never believe me anyway." "Oh, I know. Do you think that I'm bullying you by making you cook here? Is that why you want to move out to avoid me?" "Finn Taylor, oh Finn Taylor. I never thought that you were such a heartless thing. You can just let me know if you hate me. Why did you force Yvette to embezzle money from the company? Do you know how Quince Larson and the rest will deal with Yvette once they find out about this? Yvette might very well have to go to jail. Is that how you repay the Larson family? By making Yvette spend the rest of her life in jail?" Linda James was very agitated. She felt that she had already guessed the truth. There was no other possibility she could think of. "Mom, it's not what you think." Yvette Larson tried to explain, but she found no way of explaining where the money had come from. "Mom, we bought a second-hand property. It didn't cost much, and the money came from our own savings. Yvette didn't take a cent from the company." Finally, Linda James calmed down a little after hearing that. Although Finn Taylor had forked out the entire sum alone, his money was no different from his wife's money in his heart. As such, he didn't think there was anything wrong with saying that they had both paid for the house. While that was what Finn Taylor thought, Linda James clearly thought differently. "What do you mean, your shared savings? Yvette has worked so hard over the past 3 years, but you've done nothing at home. Have you ever worked or earned a single cent? Don't tell me that you were siphoning money from the money I gave you for groceries. Oh, no wonder I always thought that we weren't getting good dishes. You were stealing all the money for yourself." Linda James was truly maligning Finn Taylor. How could $200 be enough to feed a family of 4? Besides, shouldn't she look at what we've been eating? We always have meat, fish, seafood, and vegetables. There's no way we would have been able to eat such good food with only $200 a month. Finn must have forked out a lot of money, yet she's accusing him of stealing money. Because of this, Yvette Larson could no longer hold it in. Alright, Mom, can you stop? We aren't asking you for any money for this house, and neither did I steal from the company. Please get out. As she said that, she pushed her mother out of her room. Although Linda James was slightly annoyed, she had no choice but to leave. Only after Yvette Larson was sure that her mother was gone did she ask her husband, "Did you really buy a house?" He nodded. "Yes, but the house is in quite a mess now since it's under renovation. Otherwise, I'd have brought you there for a look." Seeing that her significant other was completely confident, Yvette Larson no longer suspected him. A second-hand property is better than nothing, I guess. It doesn't matter what Gavin Kleine says then. At least, we have a house. Even though it won't be as good as his, it'll still be better than that of many of my other friends. Gavin Kleine probably won't put us down too much because of the others there. To be honest, Yvette Larson didn't like Gavin Kleine very much. In fact, she hated him. He was extremely selfish and had a mean nature. He always thought that he was the smartest person in the world and that he was the only smart person in the room while everyone else was a fool. Yvette Larson remembered that he would always try to be the first to answer their teachers' questions in school. Often, he would immediately answer the questions once their teachers posed the questions, even before their teachers could give them any time to think about it. Since he had already revealed the answer, there was no need for the rest to even think about the questions. But Yvette Larson had never thought that Gavin Kleine was smart just because of that. In fact, this merely showed how socially inept he was. He thought that he was outstanding, but his eventual results had been average at best. Ellipsis. The 5th of next month. The renovations were finally completed. Once the cleaning company that Finn Taylor had hired made some finishing touches, they could move in. That day, Joseph Larson called to invite everyone to lunch. The atmosphere in the Larson family had been a little stiff recently. After giving it some thought, the old master had finally come to a conclusion: it wasn't time to choose a successor yet. This time, there would be a brand new way of determining his successor. As such, he was going to use this chance to explain it at the luncheon he was hosting. Because their grandpa had personally called them, Finn Taylor's family dared not refuse the invitation. As such, the family set off together after dressing up. By the time they arrived at their grandpa's residence, the rest of the family had arrived too. To Finn Taylor's surprise, the old master had even invited Hilary Stone too. It wasn't just Finn Taylor who was taken aback. Even the rest of the Larson family was shocked too. "Come in, all of you." In just a few days, Joseph Larson looked as though he had lost quite a lot of weight. He addressed them and invited them in. As they all entered, they saw the table filled with an assortment of dishes. When they all took a closer look at these dishes, they were stunned. Grandpa personally cooked all of these dishes. They all couldn't help but wonder what he was up to. "Today, I called you here to discuss my funeral plans." Joseph Larson's sudden words stumped the entire Larson family. Grandpa wants to discuss his funeral plans. What happened to him? Why has he suddenly lost all that weight? Could he be ill? "Grandpa, what's wrong? Are you sick?" "That's right, Grandpa, you should let us know if you aren't feeling well. Medical technology nowadays is very advanced. Don't let your imagination run wild, Grandpa." Many of the Larson family's younger generation tried to comfort Joseph Larson. Just as Yvette Larson was about to do so, her husband stopped her. He shook his head, telling his wife to stay still. Others might not have known what was happening to Joseph Larson, but Finn Taylor knew about it well. Joseph Larson wasn't sick, he had been poisoned. It was poison. Finn Taylor had found that out personally. He knew that Joseph Larson wouldn't die for now. "Come on, sit down and have your meal. I'm not sick, you don't have to worry." Recently, the Larson family has almost fallen out with each other because of the issue of succession. "I'm afraid that the whole family will crumble once I die and that the Larson family will be no more." Now that their grandpa was saying such things, everyone rushed up and tried to reassure him that it would never happen. "I don't care what you guys think, but remember that you're all Larsons. Tomorrow, I want you all to sign the agreement as an assurance that you won't leave the Larson family after I die." Initially, the whole Larson family had assured their grandpa that his worries would never become reality. But now, not a single person dared to speak up. "Francis Larson, you're the eldest. You should go first." Francis Larson agreed and walked forward. But the moment he saw the agreement's contents, his tears flowed down freely. Everyone was curious as to what Francis Larson had seen that he had been so moved. Francis Larson held up that paper, trembling slightly. Mother. He forced those words out with a choked voice. Frederick Larson and Franklin Larson rushed over. They picked up that piece of paper and were visibly overwhelmed with emotions too. On that paper was a photo of Yvette Larson's grandma. There's a photo of your mother on the agreement. If you acknowledge her as your mom, sign it. Otherwise, you're free to leave. Joseph Larson spoke with full confidence. He didn't even sound like someone who was ill. Dad, we were wrong. We'll sign it right away. In the presence of their mom, the three brothers were like children, no matter how old they were. After signing their names, they quickly asked their children to sign it too. Everyone's gazes then landed on Hilary Stone and Quinn Larson. Hilary Stone, I'm willing to put the past behind us. If you're still willing to be a daughter-in-law of the Larson family, sign this agreement with your son. If you don't want to sign it, I can always give you a sum of money, and you can leave with Quinn. Hilary Stone didn't say a thing and simply went up to put her signature on the document. Following that, Quinn Larson signed his name on the agreement too. All right, I'll hand this over to Finn Taylor for safekeeping. Joseph Larson's words left everyone dumbfounded. How could he pass such an important piece of paper to Finn Taylor, who he hates the most? Finn Taylor, I'm handing this to you because I dislike you and hate you the most. Besides, I can tell you that I'm not the only one. The whole Larson family hates you. It's because of this that I know you won't lose this paper and will keep it well. If anyone in the Larson family dares to betray us, take this out and expose them. All right, let's get to the heart of the matter. From tomorrow onward, you'll all work in the company. I'll get someone to record just how much each of you earns for our company. Let's see how much each of you can earn from today up until the day I die. The one who makes the greatest contribution will be the next Larson family head. Then, he even added, there's no difference between males or females. In an instant, the entire Larson family was stunned once again. Grandpa has finally relented and is now willing to hand the family's reins over to a female. But given the current situation, it does seem that Grandpa's idea is the fairest solution. How's that? Does anyone have any objections to it? Otherwise, we'll just proceed with that. After a few minutes of silence, the Larson family started whispering amongst themselves. It continued for over 10 minutes before the room fell into silence again. Have you all thought it through? Does anyone have any objections? Grandpa, I have a question. Do both my dad and my achievements count as mine? It was Eleanor Larson who had asked that question. That shocked everyone. In their eyes, Eleanor Larson was only someone who followed Quince Larson everywhere. They hadn't expected her to be interested in fighting for the position of family head. That's right, I already made the rule more than a decade ago that my successor will be from the third generation. That will never change. Your entire family's achievements will count as yours alone. All right, I have another question. If I get married, how will your grandson-in-law's achievements be counted? They'll naturally be yours as well if your husband can bring our Larson Corporation to greater heights. Upon hearing Joseph Larson's words, everyone's gazes naturally fell on Yvette Larson. To be honest, this battle seemed like a battle between in-laws. It was true that all four branches of the family were on similar ground in terms of resources, and the power that they held in the Larson Corporation was similar as well. But everything would change if they could find themselves a powerful spouse. In that case, Yvette Larson would definitely be at a disadvantage. After all, she was already married, and she was married to the most useless matrilocal son-in-law Finn Taylor. Finn Taylor, did you hear what Grandpa said? You'd better buck up, your achievements count toward Yvette's. Quince Larson deliberately cut in to mock Yvette Larson and her husband. He was always like this. No matter what it was, he always found a way to bring Finn Taylor into the matter. It seemed as though he would get great benefits from denigrating Finn Taylor. As such, Yvette Larson's expression immediately fell. It was Finn who had scored as the collaboration with the Sullivan family. Honestly, my husband has done much better than you, Quince Larson. Yvette Larson had to resist the urge to spill this huge secret. However, her spouse reached out and stopped her from doing so. Brother, you're really looking down on Finn Taylor. Just as the rest of the Larson family was mocking Finn Taylor, Eleanor Larson spoke up. What shocked everyone was that Eleanor Larson was speaking up for Finn Taylor. Quince Larson was confused. What do you mean, Eleanor? Brother, don't you know how impressive Finn Taylor is? He's already bought a house and is hosting a housewarming party in 5 days' time. Haven't you received an invitation? Eleanor Larson was saying this on purpose. As expected, the entire Larson family exploded. Yvette Larson, Do you mean your family bought a house? Quince Larson had never thought well of Finn Taylor. Of course, he directed his question at his cousin alone. Yvette Larson felt terribly awkward when asked about the house. Even I hadn't known anything about it, but Quince Larson and the rest are never going to let me off. Yvette Larson, don't you think you're overdoing it? You've just gotten a new car, so how could you get a new house as well? Are you trying to empty the company's bank account? Quince Larson's words turned everyone's attention to Yvette Larson. That was exactly the thought on everyone's minds. If you say that you've never taken a cent from the company, how could you have had the money to buy a house? Brother, I respect you, but you should respect me too. I've never taken any money from the company. Eleanor Larson sneered. Yvette Larson, if you've never embezzled any money from the company, why don't you tell us where you got the money to buy your car and house? Don't tell me that you struck the lottery. That's right, tell us. Yvette Larson was fuming. She wanted to tell everyone that her husband had paid for both the car and the house, but she knew that not a single person from the Larson family would believe her even if she were to tell the truth. I don't care if you guys believe me or not. Anyway, I've never taken a cent from the company. If you think I really did, you can go check the accounts. If you find anything wrong, I'm willing to go to jail. Yvette Larson felt that this would be enough to prove her innocence. However, the Larson family didn't share that thought. On the contrary, it cemented their belief that she had embezzled the company's money. Actually, everyone knew full well that they had all embezzled money from the company through the years they had been working for the Larson Corporation. The only reason Yvette Larson dared them to check the accounts was that she knew that they couldn't afford to do so. If they were to do so, all members of the Larson family would be done for, especially Quince Larson. He had always held a high position in the Larson Corporation. As such, he had benefited the most from the company. If they were to conduct an investigation, he might very well spend the rest of his life in jail. Yvette Larson, we won't conduct an investigation. It'll take too much work to check on the accounts. Do you want our company to close down? You just have to tell us where you got the money to buy your car and house. Quince Larson naturally wasn't going to check through the accounts, but he wasn't going to make that too obvious either. Quince Larson, I'm going to repeat myself. I've never taken a cent from the company. I'm willing to face an investigation, but I'm not going to let you malign me. Seeing that Quince Larson and Yvette Larson were about to get into a heated argument, Joseph Larson slammed his fist on the table. Why are you making such a din? Didn't you just sign an agreement to say that you're all a family? Do you want to split up now? Under pressure from their grandpa, the cousins finally kept quiet. Forget it, let's not talk about such unhappy things. Grandpa is right, Yvette, we're all happy for you now that you bought a new house. You should invite your family for a party, shouldn't you? Eleanor Larson said that on purpose. It was true she couldn't find any evidence of Yvette Larson embezzling the company's funds, but she had to let her grandpa see for himself the kind of house her cousin had bought. That way, her grandpa would have a rough estimate of how much Yvette Larson had taken from the company. Grandpa, we bought a second-hand property. We didn't intend on inviting anyone over, but I attended my classmate's housewarming party a few days ago, and they insisted on coming over. That's why we made a last-minute decision to host a party as well. We'll naturally welcome you if you want to come, Grandpa. Now that things had gotten to this point, Yvette Larson had no choice but to invite everyone too. This was exactly what Eleanor Larson had been waiting for. Who would have expected Joseph Larson to say, I'm not going, I'll be staying at home. Don't bother me with whatever goes on in the company or in your families. Joseph Larson's heart had hardened after the recent fight between the younger ones. He had already decided to let go of everything and live his remaining years in peace. Grandpa, it doesn't matter even if you don't go. We'll represent you, it'll be the same. Eleanor Larson cut in. This way, there's nothing Yvette Larson can do even if she doesn't welcome us. Ellipsis. Toward the end of the meal, Frances Larson and Linda James fell silent. They were both in a panic because even they knew little about their daughter buying a house. But now, the entire Larson family knew about the matter. It would be terrible if something went wrong and Quince Larson and the rest found fault with them. How would the old master treat their family then? As such, Frances Larson and Linda James couldn't help but pester their daughter about the house the moment they returned home. Yvette, I didn't manage to ask you this yesterday, but you must be honest with me. What's going on with the house? Yvette Larson felt uneasy, not knowing what to say. It's obvious my parents won't believe me if I say that I don't know anything about it. But what kind of lie am I supposed to tell them? Just then, Finn Taylor said, Mom, I bought the house. Seeing that his wife couldn't explain what was going on, Finn Taylor spilled the truth. But no sooner had he said that than Linda James shouted, "Scram! Can't you see that I'm talking to my daughter? I won't blame you guys for being unwilling to tell me the truth. It's alright for you to have your own secrets now that you've grown up, but I don't want you to lie to me. You bought the house. Do you have any money? You're a grown man, yet you laze around the house and don't even have a job. Don't you know that everyone calls you a useless matrilocal son-in-law? Do you think that it doesn't matter since you've already gotten used to it? It's alright if you don't need your dignity, but we still want ours. Don't tell me such lies that are so unbelievable in the future." Linda James was raging and returned to her room after lashing out at her son-in-law. With that, the questioning about their house stopped as well. The couple glanced at each other, helplessness written on their faces. "We already told her the truth of the matter. What can we do since she's the one who chooses not to believe us?" Yvette Larson called her husband to her room. "Finn, I'm quite curious. Where's the house that you purchased? We're hosting everyone there in a few days' time. Why don't you bring me there to take a look at it first?" She was curious about where the house was located. She also wanted to come up with some backup plans in case anything went wrong with the house. "Alright, let's go tomorrow then." The couple decided on the time. Ellipsis. In the blink of an eye, the second day arrived. Yvette Larson sat in the front passenger seat, looking forward to seeing her own house. With that, they set out. The direction they headed in left Yvette Larson a little stunned. This was because they weren't heading into the city center. Although this disappointed her slightly, it seemed good enough that her husband had managed to buy a house without any income. How could he have bought a house in the city center? But as they drove on, Yvette Larson felt that something was wrong once again. She realized that they were headed toward Pacific Heights. How could that be? Yvette Larson was dumbfounded, yet she didn't dare to question her husband. "We're probably just passing through Pacific Heights, right? Our house is probably in the suburbs. Although we do have a house now, we'll only be able to afford one in the suburbs." But just as that thought crossed Yvette Larson's mind, the car turned into Pacific Heights. Yvette Larson's heart thumped crazily. Could it be that our house is really at Pacific Heights? "Finn, are you driving in the wrong direction?" Yvette Larson asked cautiously. She felt as though she was dreaming, and whether this dream would be shattered depended solely on her significant other's answer. No, as expected, Finn Taylor's answer was what Yvette Larson was waiting for. However, she couldn't help but look on incredulously. "Do you mean that Finn bought a house at Pacific Heights? But how is that possible?" The car drove slowly toward the peak of Pacific Heights. Halfway up the hill, they were stopped. At that moment, Yvette Larson felt like she was finally going to wake up from her dream. "That's right, Finn is just joking with me. He's trying to tell me that we'll eventually live here at Pacific Heights, but there's no way he could have bought a house here this time. Look, isn't he being stopped now?" Just as Yvette Larson thought that she had discovered the truth, she saw her spouse retrieve a card and hand it to the person outside the car. Then, that person quickly handed the card back to her husband, and their car was sent on their way. After that, they weren't stopped again. That was how they entered the core of Pacific Heights. Yvette Larson remembered that they had previously snuck into Pacific Heights when they had gone to the Sullivan family's residence. But this time, they were entering in broad daylight without any difficulties. "This can't be true. Is our house really here? Which one is ours then?" As the car drove up the hill, Yvette Larson saw that there was a number in front of every villa. 100, 99, 98, ellipsis. As they drove further up the hill, the numbers got smaller, and the houses naturally got bigger and grander. "Why isn't Finn Taylor stopping yet? We've already driven past number 80. Do you mean that our number is smaller than 80? Just as Yvette Larson thought that the car would stop at number 60 or 70, they drove past number 50. "That can't be. There are 100 extravagant villas here. It has a completely different meaning once we go past number 50. Yvette Larson couldn't even imagine the kind of statuses these villas owners had in San Francisco. But the car rolled on. 40, 30, 20, 10. The moment the car drove past number 10, Yvette Larson felt as though she was going to suffocate. Single quote, "I've heard rumors about this neighborhood. The peak of Pacific Heights houses the 10 grandest villas. Every villa is a restricted area that only the owners are allowed to step foot into. If anyone dares to trespass into their property, their limbs will be chopped off before they are thrown off Pacific Heights. But Finn has driven all the way up here." Yvette Larson didn't believe that the second-hand property her husband had been talking about would be one of the 10 most expensive properties in Pacific Heights. That's impossible. Nonetheless, the car rolled to a gradual stop in front of number 1 Pacific Heights. Finn Taylor was just about to get out of the car. "Finn, don't get down." Just then, Yvette Larson held her husband back. "What's wrong? If you get out, your limbs will be chopped off, and you'll be thrown off Pacific Heights." Finn Taylor laughed and asked, "Why? It's private property here. These are the rules of Pacific Heights. This is what happens when strangers enter." Finn Taylor laughed and pointed at the villa. "This is our house. Who will dare to chop off my limbs and throw me off the hill when I'm entering my own house?" With that, Finn Taylor got out of the car without listening to his wife's advice. Yvette Larson's heart tightened. Something is going to happen. Finn has gone too far with his joke this time. At that moment, the door to number 1 Pacific Heights was opened. Someone then walked out of the villa and headed straight toward Yvette Larson's car door. Yvette Larson was so anxious that she felt like she was going to die. The man walking over was a besuited elder. He looked extremely cultured. "He must be the owner of this villa." Yvette Larson panicked inwardly. The owner has found out about us trespassing on his private property. She could imagine just how terrifying the consequences would be. The elder walked up to Yvette Larson and reached out to open her door. By now, Yvette Larson was so frightened that she had clamped her eyes shut, trying to avoid the owner at all costs. She was truly terrified. Finn has really gone too far with his joke this time. How am I supposed to clean up this mess? She heard the car door being pulled open. "Ma'am, please get out." Just as Yvette Larson thought that she would be lambasted, she unexpectedly heard the word, "ma'am." Yvette Larson wondered if she was hallucinating because of her nerves. "Ma'am, is there something I've done wrong?" Only after hearing that word for the second time was she now certain that she wasn't hallucinating. Someone had indeed addressed her as, "ma'am." She opened her eyes slowly and looked at the owner beside her, who was smiling kindly at her. Did you call me, ma'am?" The owner nodded. "I've been waiting for the both of you for a long time. Ma'am, please get out of the car and have a look around the villa." "Sir, ma'am, what is going on?" Yvette Larson was still full of questions when her husband walked over. "Go prepare something to eat," he ordered the elder, who backed away respectfully. "Finn, what's going on?" Yvette Larson's palm was drenched in sweat. She felt as though her whole world was being turned upside down. "This is our house. Do you like it?" Finn Taylor pointed at the villa at number 1 Pacific Heights. "Why, you mean that this is the house you bought?" "Yes." "Who was that person?" Yvette Larson was in a daze. If Finn is the owner of number 1 Pacific Heights, who was that man? "He's our butler." "Didn't he address you as, ma'am?" "B. Butler." Yvette Larson felt as though she was dreaming. "We have a butler. Number 1 Pacific Heights isn't just this villa, it includes the whole peak of Pacific Heights. Every tree, flower, and rock belongs to us. It'll be a mess if we don't have a butler." Yvette Larson was speechless. She didn't even know what to say. "The most expensive and luxurious villa in all of San Francisco is mine. I'm so lucky to have everything here. Let's go and see whether you like the decor in our house." Finn Taylor offered his hand like a gentleman. Although Yvette Larson still found everything incredulous, she reluctantly accepted it. She stretched her hand out and got out of the car, her hand in her husband's. As the couple entered the villa, the first thing that greeted them was a photo. It was humongous, measuring 10 x 20 meters. It was a wedding photo of Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson. While Finn Taylor was smiling widely in the photo, Yvette Larson had a blank expression. This had been taken the day before their wedding. At that time, Yvette Larson had hated the idea of marrying the other. It was only because of the late old master's order that she had been forced to accept this marriage. As such, she didn't even try to put up a happy front while taking her wedding photos. She had never expected her husband to treasure this photo so much that he had even hung it up here, even though she had been very unwilling to take this photo. It was only when she saw this wedding photo hanging here that she finally believed that this house belonged to her and Finn Taylor. "Take it away." Finn Taylor's face was plastered with a smile as he looked at the wedding photo. However, his wife had suddenly said those 3 words. Finn Taylor was taken aback but didn't probe her any further. "Uncle Sam, take that wedding photo down." Uncle Sam was the butler Finn Taylor was talking about. The former walked over without a word and immediately did as the latter said. After the wedding photo was taken down, Yvette Larson finally asked her husband, "Do you like it?" "Yes, it's our wedding photo. It's the most beautiful photo in the world." But the bride wasn't smiling. "As long as the groom works hard, she will one day." "All right, let's retake a wedding photo, one where I'm smiling, and hang it here." "How's that?" Finn Taylor was stunned. He never thought that this would be the reason his wife had asked him to remove this photo. Okay. Finn Taylor was overjoyed and answered quickly. He then brought his wife to take a look at all the rooms. She was pleased with the decor style her husband had chosen for them. The couple stood on the balcony, looking out at the view over San Francisco. Yvette Larson suddenly asked her husband a question. Last time, you said that your money came from the late old master, and I believed you. But how are you going to explain this house? It's impossible that this was bought with the late old master's money. Even if you gather the entire Larson family's assets, we would never be able to afford this villa. This must mean that the money has always been yours. Yvette Larson's gaze was sharp as she stared at her husband. I won't ask you where you got all this money from, but I hope to see a different you, one where you don't just tolerate everything because of me. Yvette Larson wasn't a fool. In fact, she was a strong and independent woman. Finn Taylor having so much money only meant one thing: he had been a big shot before their marriage. However, he had chosen to tolerate all that humiliation just for her sake. Yvette Larson's heart ached whenever she saw her husband acting that way. She didn't like the current Finn Taylor. She wanted her husband to be a heroic young man who could protect her. All right, I promise you. Finn Taylor picked up his wife's hand and made a solemn promise. Ellipsis. Time flew by, and the 10th arrived. It was the day of Yvette Larson's housewarming party. The entire Larson family had already gathered at their grandpa's house, while Yvette Larson's classmates had gathered at Gavin Klein's house. Finn Taylor had already discussed the matter with the managers of Pacific Heights and had sent 2 buses from Pacific Heights to pick all their guests up. As for Linda James and Francis Larson, it was only right that Finn Taylor and his wife personally took them to their new house. Linda James pursed her lips after getting into the car. Hey, I don't understand why Yvette lets you drive such a nice car. You don't even make any contributions to our family, yet you get to drive a luxury car and live in a new house. Finn Taylor, we must have accumulated 8 lifetimes worth of bad luck to have a matrilocal son-in-law like you. Linda James's words made her daughter very uncomfortable. While others were still in the dark, she was absolutely clear that her car and house had all been paid for by her spouse. If we want to talk about bad luck, it's probably Finn's bad luck for having such a mother-in-law. Mom, can you stop? If you are too embarrassed to go, you can get out of the car now. Finn, stop the car. Finn Taylor listened to his wife and immediately stepped on the brakes, causing the car to come to a screeching halt. Either you shut up from now on and stop speaking ill of my husband, or you get out now. What's your choice? Linda James was scared stiff by her daughter's attitude, and she chose not to say anything in the end. As such, the car moved off once again. Along the way, Linda James seemed to want to say something again. But in the end, she swallowed her words. As they drove along, Linda James felt that something was amiss. Why are we headed toward Pacific Heights? Although Linda James rarely got out of the house, she knew exactly how expensive the villas at Pacific Heights were. Didn't Yvette say that they bought a normal second-hand property? A villa at Pacific Heights is a normal second-hand property. Yvette Larson had been no less surprised than her mother the first time she had visited their house. Even now, she felt as though she was in a dream. The car drove up Pacific Heights, and Linda James couldn't conceal her surprise. However, she didn't know how the numbers on Pacific Heights worked. As such, she simply felt shocked the moment they drove up the hill. But her husband was different. He knew full well how things worked at Pacific Heights. This was the first time Francis Larson spoke after getting into the car. Finn Taylor, are you sure you're not driving in the wrong direction? This is private property. You'll be punished for trespassing. Finn Taylor drove on silently as his wife answered her father. Dad, just sit still. We'll be there soon. Although Francis Larson was confused, he chose to believe his daughter. Eventually, the car rolled to a stop. When Francis Larson realized that they were parked in front of number 1 Pacific Heights, there was only horror on his face. Just as Linda James was about to get out, Francis Larson pulled her back. Don't get out. Why? Linda James was confused. Why is Francis suddenly getting so stern when he's normally so reserved? Finn Taylor, why did you drive us here? Do you know that the 100 villas at Pacific Heights are private property? Our limbs will be chopped off, and we'll be thrown off Pacific Heights if we trespass. Also, this is the grandest villa of them all, number 1 Pacific Heights. Francis Larson's words enraged Linda James. Finn Taylor, you're a piece of work. All I did was lecture you, but I'm still your mom and elder. How could you try to kill me like this? Finn Taylor ignored them and simply walked out of the car. By then, the butler Uncle Sam was already waiting for them. After speaking with the latter, Uncle Sam walked up to the car and knocked on the window. Francis Larson rolled the window down, wanting to explain themselves. Since Uncle Sam had walked out of the villa, he had to be the owner. But before he could say anything, Uncle Sam spoke up. "Old Master, Madam, I'm the butler of number 1 Pacific Heights. Master has asked me to invite you guys down for some refreshments." Old Master, Madam, Francis Larson was utterly confused by the way Uncle Sam was addressing them. "You're addressing us as Old Master and Madam." "Yes, Finn Taylor is the villa's master, so you guys are naturally the Old Master and Madam." Shock, complete shock, extreme shock. Francis Larson and Linda James felt like they had heard a joke. Finn Taylor is the owner of this villa. Number 1 Pacific Heights represents the top of the pyramid in the entire San Francisco. But now, Uncle Sam is telling us that Finn Taylor is the person at the top of the pyramid. Uncle Sam quickly opened the door for Francis Larson and invited the couple out of the car. Up until now, the couple was still in a daze. It felt like they were in a dream. Francis Larson and Linda James were invited into the villa. In the face of this house that was worth hundreds of millions, the couple panicked. Just then, Linda James suddenly thought of something. Where did they get the money to buy this house? Yvette couldn't have taken this money from the company. Although Linda James knew nothing about the company's financials, she knew that they never would have been able to afford a villa at Pacific Heights even if they were to empty the company's bank accounts. She rushed up to her daughter. "Where did you get the money? Would you believe me if I said that Finn paid for this?" "Yvette, I might be old, but I'm no fool. I'll believe you even if you said you stole this, but I will never believe you when you say that that piece of trash bought this." Of course, Linda James refused to believe that her son-in-law had paid for this house. Over the past 3 years, she had gained a good understanding of Finn Taylor as a person. If he were capable, he would have become a socialite and a household name. There's no way he would have been cooped up in our house. "Well then, I've told you the truth, but you don't believe me." Since she wasn't making any progress with her daughter, Linda James chose to interrogate her son-in-law. "Finn Taylor, tell me, where did you get the money to buy this house? If you dare to lie to me, I'll kill you." "I won the lottery." Linda James was in disbelief, but she couldn't think of another possibility. "Did you really win the lottery?" "Yes." "Who bought the winning ticket?" Linda James suddenly thought of an important question. If Yvette bought it, this house would be hers. But if it was Finn Taylor, this house. "I bought it." Unfortunately, this wasn't the answer Linda James wanted. Finn Taylor had told her that he had bought the ticket. "Where did you get the money to buy this ticket?" "From the money I gave you for groceries. Or from Yvette's allowance." Linda James found another way to force him to tell the truth about the origins of the money. "As long as our family paid for the ticket, this house is ours. Finn Taylor has nothing to do with that money." "Yvette's allowance. All right, that means that Yvette bought it and won the lottery. Do you agree?" "Yes, we won." "No, you are you. Yvette is Yvette. She gave you the money to buy this ticket, so Yvette was the one who won. Since the house was paid for with that money, that means the house is Yvette's. Finn Taylor, do you agree?" Yvette Larson was at a loss for words upon hearing her mom's logic. "Mom is really ridiculous. Even though I'm her daughter, I can't stand it any longer. Finn bought this house, so what does it have to do with us? She's kicking up such a huge fuss just for one reason, for Finn to acknowledge that this house is mine." "Mom, can you stop? The guests will be here soon. Do you want to have such a huge argument in front of our guests?" With that, Yvette Larson dragged her husband away, not giving her mother the chance to continue. Linda James was furious with her daughter's actions. "Why do I have such a stupid daughter? Don't you know that it's most important to have control over your husband's wallet? Since I don't like Finn Taylor, it's only a matter of time before you guys get a divorce. We must get this house under our names before chasing him out." Ellipsis. Over at the Larson family's side, Quince Larson, Eleanor Larson, and the rest of the family were already waiting at the Larson family's residence. Yvette Larson said that she'd send a car over for us. "Why isn't it here yet?" Quince Larson glanced at his watch. Eleanor Larson glanced at it. It was a Rolex worth tens of thousands at the very least. "Brother, you're doing quite well. You've even managed to buy a Rolex." Quince Larson was arrogant. "Do you remember the business deal that I secured last year? I got my reward and bought myself this Rolex. I have to say that a Rolex is a Rolex after all. It's so comfortable wearing it." Quince Larson purposely exposed the watch to show it off to the Larson family. Eleanor Larson's principle was to inflate her cousin's ego at all costs. "I'll wait until the day you can't boost your ego any further. That will be my day to shine." It was the two cousins' different goals that had created this scene. Just then, a bus stopped in front of the Larson family's residence. "Are you Finn Taylor's guests? Please get in." With that, all of the Larson family members got up on the bus. Once they were all on the bus, they moved off. Then, the bus drove toward Gavin Klein's house. There, Yvette Larson's classmates were waiting. They had already been waiting at the entrance of Gavin Klein's neighborhood for a good half an hour, but they had neither seen nor heard anything. Someone panicked. "Do you think that Yvette Larson was lying to us? Maybe she hasn't even bought a house." "I don't think so. Look, it's been half an hour, but we haven't even heard anything from them. San Francisco isn't that big. How far could their house be for the bus not to be here yet? Don't tell me that she bought a house in the suburbs." PFF'd. Everyone burst out into laughter at that suggestion. Just then, the bus finally arrived. Like he had done earlier, the driver shouted at them, "Do you know Finn Taylor? If so, please get in." The classmates glanced at each other, and the person who had doubted Yvette Larson earlier said, "Oh, they've actually come to pick us up. Let's go and have a look at what house she's bought." Then, he got up onto the bus. Gavin Kleiner remained silent the entire time. As they got on, they realized that others were already on the bus. After realizing that it was the Larson family of San Francisco, the classmates wisely chose to stay silent. While the Larson family fought with each other, they would never let outsiders speak ill of them. Seeing that everyone had gotten on board, the bus driver stepped on his accelerator and headed toward Pacific Heights. When the passengers realized that they were indeed headed for the suburbs, the disdain on their faces was evident. However, that disdain quickly turned into confusion. This was because the bus was headed toward the suburbs, but they hadn't gone onto the road heading for the suburbs. Instead, they were traveling along a road that led only to Pacific Heights. At that moment, a wild thought flashed past everyone's mind. But after giving it some thought, they realized that Yvette Larson's family would never be able to afford a villa at Pacific Heights. As such, they calmed down yet again. "We must be taking a shortcut." But this thought was quickly proven wrong once the bus headed up Pacific Heights. Why are we driving up Pacific Heights? Didn't Yvette Larson's family buy a normal secondhand property? Someone finally spoke up. "Are we headed in the wrong direction? Hey, are you sure you were supposed to pick us up?" The driver continued along the road, thinking that he was about to reach his destination. However, he immediately reacted the moment he heard those words. She slammed on his brakes. "Fuck, I picked up the wrong people. That's impossible. It's the owner of number 1 Pacific Heights hosting a party. I'll be doomed if I pick the wrong people up." The driver took out a name list and looked at his passengers. "Who's Quince Larson?" "Me." Quince Larson raised his hand. "Let me check your identification card." Quince Larson thought that this was ridiculous, but realizing that this was a driver from the Pacific Heights neighborhood, the former didn't dare to go against his orders. As such, he handed his identification card over. The driver compared it to his name list. "I didn't make a mistake." "Who's Gavin Klein?" "Me," Gavin Klein answered. "What are you waiting for? Where's your identification card?" Gavin Klein was terribly displeased with the driver's attitude, thinking that the driver had embarrassed him in front of his classmates. Nonetheless, he had no choice but to take his identification card out. After glancing at it, the driver confirmed that the second batch of passengers he had picked up were the right people too. "No, I didn't make a mistake." With that, he returned to his seat and headed up the hill. While the driver was calm, the passengers were not. What does he mean? He didn't pick the wrong people up. Does that mean that Yvette Larson's house is really at Pacific Heights? But how is that possible? Everyone present knew full well just how expensive a villa at Pacific Heights was. "Maybe we'll believe you if you say that Yvette Larson's family managed to buy a second-hand property after scrimping and saving for decades. But there's no way they would have been able to buy a villa at Pacific Heights." The vehicle rolled on, and it passed the midway point, finally reaching the area where the top 100 villas were. At this, someone exploded. "No, this is a plot. Yvette Larson wants us to trespass on private property, get our limbs chopped off, and thrown off Pacific Heights." The bus didn't stop just because of their protests, and very quickly, they arrived at number 1 Pacific Heights. The driver brought the bus to a gradual stop. Uncle Sam brought 2 boxes of cigarettes over. The driver couldn't help but exclaim that this family was different. "They are so generous. Whenever I chauffeured other passengers, they only offered me very ordinary cigarettes. It's my first time receiving such luxurious cigarettes, and I've received 2 boxes. After handing out the cigarettes, Uncle Sam got on the bus. "It's been a long journey. Please come down and have some refreshments. We've prepared a lot of delectable food for all of you." But nobody was convinced by Uncle Sam. In fact, someone even questioned his identity. Who are you? How much did Yvette Larson pay you to put on a show here? Do you know that we'll be trespassing the moment we get out? Maybe the villa's true owner will suddenly show up and chop our limbs off before throwing us off Pacific Heights. Uncle Sam let out a smile. Yvette Larson is my master's wife. It's only right to do whatever she instructs me to. Not a single person believed Uncle Sam's words. But just then, someone appeared in front of them, Linda James. She had wanted to continue lecturing her daughter when she realized that her relatives from the Larson family had arrived. As such, she immediately rushed out. She couldn't wait to tell the world that their family had bought a new house at number 1 Pacific Heights, no less. Linda James looked at her guests. Since you're all here, why don't you get down? Come on in. Although this is our house, just treat this as your own house. With that, she went up to pull Eleanor Larson down. That was how Eleanor Larson was dragged out of the bus. At that moment, everyone was utterly confused. Even if Yvette Larson is trying to kill all of us, she wouldn't possibly hurt her mom, right? But don't you think it's impossible for her to buy number 1 Pacific Heights? While everyone was still lost in confusion, Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson appeared. Upon seeing Finn Taylor, the bus driver immediately got out and tried to shake the former's hand. This is the owner of number 1 Pacific Heights. I'd probably win the lottery if I shake his hand. Of course, Finn Taylor didn't look down on him and shook his hand. He even gave him some money. Seeing that Finn Taylor and Yvette Larson were standing in front of the villa, the passengers finally got off. However, everyone was still in a daze. Quince Larson pointed at number 1 Pacific Heights and asked his cousin, "Is this the new house that you bought?" Of course, Quince Larson had already been prepared to mock the couple once he arrived at their house, but now, he had to swallow all of his prepared words. He furtively pushed the Rolex up his sleeve, trying his best to conceal it. While it was true that a Rolex was expensive, there was no comparing it to number 1 Pacific Heights. "Uncle Sam, go greet the guests." Finn Taylor addressed Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam put on a wide smile. "Hello, everyone, I'm the butler of number 1 Pacific Heights. Please come with me." With that, he raised his right arm up and led everyone into the house. When they walked in, they were overwhelmed with emotions. Everyone knew that number 1 Pacific Heights was wonderful, but one wouldn't even be able to imagine just how luxurious and perfect it was until one toured it personally. Uncle Sam led the guests to a hall that was terribly extravagant and had luxurious details. "This is the third hall of number 1 Pacific Heights. Please have a seat, I'll bring some snacks over." Everyone had heard Uncle Sam's words and had caught the most important detail: this was just the third hall. That also meant that it was nowhere near the most extravagant hall in the whole villa. In fact, it wasn't even the backup second hall. They couldn't help but feel jealousy rise up in their hearts. "Yvette Larson, what do you mean by this? How could you host us in the third hall? What, are we not important enough to be hosted in the main hall?" Eleanor Larson had spoken up. She wasn't the only one who was displeased. The rest of the Larson family members were as well. But Yvette Larson's classmates were already so stunned that they couldn't utter a word, including Gavin Kleina. Previously, he had even boasted in Yvette Larson's face that he earned hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. But that was a joke compared to number 1 Pacific Heights. "Yvette Larson, don't tell me that you spent a fortune renting this third hall. Is that why you won't allow us into the main hall?" Quince Larson proposed a bold suggestion. It was absurd, but all the other guests agreed with him. How could Yvette Larson suddenly have so much money to buy number 1 Pacific Heights? But she would probably have enough money to rent the third hall here. After all, you do know Hunter Sullivan. You might have been able to rent it with his help. It's not that I don't want to host you there, but it's mainly because the main hall is too small. The reason Finn Taylor had arranged for them to be in the third hall instead of the main hall was that the main hall and second hall couldn't fit so many people. The main hall was a conference room meant for two. It was meant for the villa owner to welcome his most important guests for a chat. As for the second hall, it wasn't big either. It was for the villa owner to have their own family over. It was cozy and could only fit 4 at the very most. With dozens of people around, they naturally had to use the third hall. Of course, not a single person believed Finn Taylor. He laughed. "These people are so ignorant." He gestured. "Uncle Sam, why don't you show them around?" Quince Larson, Eleanor Larson, and the rest of the Larson family didn't believe him. As such, they followed behind Uncle Sam to take a look at the main hall and second hall. All of them wanted to find fault in what Finn Taylor had said. But by the time they returned, their faces were all filled with incredulity. It seemed as though they had been struck down completely. "Oh, The pain of being ignorant fools. Just like Finn Taylor had said, the main hall and second hall were smaller and not suitable for hosting that many guests. However, they were far more luxuriously decked out than the third hall. The greatest question Quince Larson had on his mind was where the money had come from. I wonder if I should let Grandpa know about this. Wait for next part.